All right. I think we're live. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 449, Black Tech Talk. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. Doc and description beneath the video for you to follow along with. If you want to engage in discussion, there'll be a link in the chat for you to click on. When you click on the link, make sure you raise your hand so that one of us can acknowledge you and advance you to the panel. Just as an FYI, we do offer IT mentorship. If you're trying to get into IT for the first time, we do offer mentorship in that area. If you're trying to transition from one IT role to another, we do offer IT coaching. If you are, if you have any questions about your resume or cover letter or salaries and wages, we do offer advice in that area. If you're in the tri-state area looking for IT contracts, the Golden 11 does have recs on the table. If you're in need of life coaching, Reigning Woman does offer life coaching on her channel. Make sure you subscribe to Reigning Woman. She is in the chat. All right. Yep, we got enough likes. 7 people watching, 7 likes. Let's go ahead and get this started. Hey, what's going on, Complex?
What up, Mike?
What up, man?
Chilling, man.
All right, let me get some water that I can fire this up.
Greetings, folks. Happy Saturday. Thank you all for stopping through. We're going to do as we typically do. Mike, you're muted in case you didn't know. Mike, you're muted. Mike, can you hear me? Because we can't hear you. You're muted. Okay, he might be having some issues there. Yo, Mike. Here, let me check the chat real quick. Can you guys hear Mike? You can hear Mike, press 1. If you can't hear him, or if you can't hear him, press 0.
I'm not talking, so.
Oh, shit. Dude, I thought you were talking.
No, man, I said I had to go get some water. So.
Oh. I thought you had gotten water. Never mind then.
No, I'm good.
All right.
All right. This first item on the docket is from CIO.com. 10 reasons to ignore computer science degrees. This should be interesting. Many organizations are looking beyond the CS degree to hire programmers who can deliver real results. Here's why they might be right. All right, let me expand this out. Consider the 2 words, computer and science. The first gifts to the world are huge and range from the life-saving ubiquity of electronic medical records to the opportunity to get in a virtual bar fight at any time of the day on Twitter. The second word, science, represents an intellectual movement that's delivered great advances like the polio vaccine, a few trips to the moon, and too many others to list. So why does combining the two words into computer science come up so short, especially when we're looking for stuff, looking to staff up our programming teams? It's not that the field hasn't delivered. There are petabytes of latex files out there filled with brilliant ideas like new programming languages, clever search algorithms, machine vision algorithms, and a gazillion notions in between. Many of these are wonderful. The problem is that few of us really need much of any of it. One friend confessed that he's watched a development team flourish by passing over CS graduates and hiring only physicists, accountants, and some other kind of math savvy person. These new employees are more practical and focused on getting the machines to deliver, which is pretty much what almost all business want to do. It's not that CS degrees are bad, it's just that they are not going to speak to the problems that most of us need to solve. So here is a rather incomplete list of why we may be better off ignoring them. Theory distracts and confuses. I've heard of this before. Many computer science, what? What's this?
The hell is that? Oh, click the little.
Many computer scientists are mathematicians at heart, and the theorem-obsessed mindset permeates the discipline. One theoretician told me that all mathematical proofs are really just programs and vice versa. At least in his mind, he's not really interested in delivering code that does the work as much as proving his code is correct. Okay. It's rare for a computer science major to graduate without getting a healthy dose of MP completeness and Turing machines. Two beautiful areas of theory that would be enjoyable if they didn't end up creating bad instincts. One biologist asked me to solve a problem in DNA sequence matching, and I came back to him with the claim that it was NP complete, a class of problems that can take a very long time to solve. He didn't care. He needed to solve it anyways. And it turns out that most NP complete problems are pretty easy to solve most of the time. There are just a few pathological instances that gum up our algorithms. But theoreticians are obsessed with the thin set that confound the simple algorithms, despite being rarely observed in everyday life. This is true. I've heard this many times before that they do. They are sticklers for the hell was that? That there are sticklers, for being perfect. Things have to be 99.99% is not good enough. It has to be 100. So that's just how they think. Academic languages are rarely used. We shouldn't be surprised that the academy breeds snobbery. I've heard that before here. And a love for arcane solutions. It does this in every field. When I asked one MIT graduate his favorite language, he proudly told me that he was sure I had no idea what it was. Only after pushing a bit did he relent and tell me it was CLU. He was right. There are many great ideas out there from those obsessed with languages, but sometimes these ideas end up creating clutter and confusion. If one team member loves some odd feature and starts including it in the code base, everyone else is going to learn them. If everyone does the same, the time to get up to speed is brutal. This is why Google chose the low road when it built Go. The creators insisted that the language should have few constructs and be simple to learn in the shortest possible time. The simplicity helped everyone because everyone knew this core very well. So they're right about this. Too many languages just it happens often. You know, somebody is a C++ SME, and then another guy is a Java, or another person is C Sharp, and so on and so forth. You have these sort of conflicting and biases structured into the environment because there's two conflicting of a preferential language. And there's still, you know, people still like COBOL and things like that. They like the things that they were back in the day. Now you have Python and stuff like that. Too many languages are used, and when an organization has to choose just one basic language. In some I would say that computer science programs do focus on a myriad of languages because they are trying to teach you from a certain generalist scope. And so you'll go over C, you'll go over command line and things like that. And by the time you get there, you can never master any of them. It's just too many languages to learn.
Right. You're like what they say, a jack of all trades, a master of none.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna make an analogy, but I'll spare that for now. But no, I understand where this is coming from, because you can kind of get, you can sort of I don't want to say pigeonhole yourself, but it's always good to understand application. Like if you're gonna devote time and energy to understanding something, you have to understand it with an application in mind. I think that's really what's key, because you can get caught up in the theorem side of the game, right? And really it becomes an exercise in just proving yourself right. Or your concept or your theory right. It's not necessarily in the realm of R&D and application. It's not there. It's just the concept in and of itself. So that's where a lot of the garbage code comes in, because really a lot of the basis is a lot of it is just around the idea of the concept or the idea of proving a concept right. It's not actually for application. If you're doing something for application, you want to simplify it, i.e. the Google Go platform. You know what I mean? There's two different methodologies, two different modalities. And you know what you're saying, you know, with regards to how it's taught in the computer science programs, yeah, it's a very generalist view. So it really doesn't take a specification angle and say, well, look, you know, these are the industries where you're largely reliant on this language. These industries, or you know, these applications largely reliant on this angle, and it kind of gives you a choice at that point. And that's really just not what's present at the moment.
Yeah, because the problem with computer science, and I'm not going to read the whole article, I'm just going to read some of the criticism. The problem with computer science is that they're teaching it at the end of K through 12 and not at the beginning of K through 12.
Exactly.
If they taught it at the beginning, and by the time they leave, then it's already 12 years of computer science rather than that 4 years of computer science crammed into them.
You have an idea, you already have a natural ingrained idea of how to apply it, where to apply it.
It's cultivated. You're cultivating the kids into thinking that way rather than waiting until their brain has already been molded through the public education system. And that's where the problem is. And I would say the same thing about computer engineering too, because computer engineering is just the hard side of computer science. It's the electrical side of it.
Right, like actually building the breadboards and all that.
Well, it's the practical application, right? Computer science goes over the theory, but the computer engineering goes into the applied sciences, right? So had they done all of that since, you know, what do you call it? Preschool. If you had done it from preschool, they would fare out better. I think we covered an article before that. I think Singapore has actually implemented that into their early learning system, early learning public education system. And
What
so
were those? What were those? And you spoke to this before. What were those kits that we used to get from Radio Shack?
those are electronic learning kits.
Yeah. Why isn't that like a standard learning tool?
Because they don't want to spend the money on it, for one. And two, the idea is to indoctrinate you rather than to teach you anything. And so that's the whole purpose of American public education, to indoctrinate everyone. And so you used to stand up every morning and pledge allegiance to the flag. You don't do that anymore. That's pretty offensive, right? It was an indoctrination tactic. They did that during the Cold War, but once the Soviet Union collapsed, they stopped doing it. And so the way they taught in public schools is just to basically indoctrinate you. It was just enough to get you by, but not to actually facilitate any sort of innovation. That's why most of your Silicon Valley early innovators came. They weren't even American, right? Steve Jobs was a Syrian. He was Arab. Same thing with Elon Musk. He came out of South Africa, right? So
Right.
they weren't indoctrinated through the system, and that's the sort of difference and sort of output that you're going to get.
Even isn't like those dudes was it Sergey Brin and the other cat? They're like Israeli, ain't they?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that one of them might be Lebanese.
Or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Many CS professors are mathematicians, not programmers. This is very true. So they're not really looking at it from an application standpoint. They're just looking at it from a theoretical standpoint. Many required subjects are rarely used. This is true. Data structures are often the main topic for the second course students take in computer science. It's too bad few of us use many data structures anymore. We either plot things in object hash tables or push them into a database that does the thinking for us. It's still quite useful for everyone to think a bit about the algorithmic complexity, but very few need to worry about B trees or even linked lists. Not only that, but many of us realize that we are better off trusting a standard library than fiddling around with data structures ourselves. It's too easy to make mistakes. Many organizations explicitly forbid roll your own data structures with good reason. This is very true. I know Keep It Techie, he's a DB guy himself, so he could probably speak to like linked lists and things of that nature.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's why they, for instance, different organizations that I've worked in, they frown upon people creating their own like spreadsheets, and because I mean, you eventually have conflicting data, and people that they'll go into a boardroom talking to um, some higher ups and showing different numbers, or they manipulated the numbers to show their narrative, um, um, based on or to help their cause or whatever. It eliminates that by everybody going to one source where the data is pulled from. And I remember I was talking earlier about applications,
Mhm.
and I definitely agree with that, that it should be some type of standardization, because when you're talking about different programming languages and different applications, for instance, with that's why cloud computing is very is very good for that. Or not, actually not cloud computing, but containers are very good for that, to help fix some of that, because with different applications you have different dependencies, you have different libraries that are tied to it, and they all have to be maintained on that one computer. If you have multiple if it's not containerized. And so that's one thing containerization actually solves. uh so I mean, I just wanted to add that point.
Yeah,
No, that's good shit, man. What up? What up?
What's going on though? I
no,
got
GG. Yeah, good.
there are not there are any number of other examples of subjects in this classic curriculum that just aren't that important anymore. Compilers are complex and essential, but the only people who write them are students who are forced to create toy versions in a semester-long course. Even Apple used stock open source tools when it created, just misspelled, created the compiler for Swift. So this is true. And so the problem, again, with computer science and just public education in particular is that we live in an era where you have interconnected systems of information, and we're trying to teach people, you know, how a wind-up vehicle, a wind-up engine from back in 1900s worked when we already have electric vehicles today by Tesla. It's not applicable. You cannot wind up a Tesla. I know some people probably would like to do that, but that's not the way how that car works. And it's not the way how vehicles work today. And so therefore we're teaching them this sort of archaic sort of perspective that's no longer applicable. And I don't think anybody has come up with a better curriculum to actually correct this issue, because if you took computer science from a modern standpoint and looked at the way how we do things today rather than how we did it in the 1960s, you would actually be able to integrate it into public education and actually come up with better, innovative people, because you're already molding their mind into modern theory.
Well, I was going to say you have to so then you have to actually take a futurist approach to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's the thing, you know. So I mean, I guess maybe we start, and maybe this might be sort of like a different deep dive, but the concept or the idea, philosophies, or, you know, what are the components that make up, say, Afrofuturism or ADOS futurism, if you really want to get specific about it, right? Because it's a visualization of seeing what integrating into technology looks like specifically for us. You know what I mean? So I think, you know, Mike, you always say, you know, you can't really come up with complex solutions unless you have complex discussions, right?
You're saying it wrong. You can't come up with innovative thoughts without, you can't have innovative ideas without coming up with complex conversations. So
that's the one.
yeah.
So you know what I mean? So it's like you have to kind of maybe even kind of start there with the sort of Afrofuturist projection, and saying, okay, because that's really kind of, you know, that's the angle that I take from all of this when we have these discussions. I'm literally looking at it from a day-to-day implementation, usage, and application of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I kind of see this as sort of like an integrated cultural norm for us 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years into the future. Mm-hmm. I see us being very proficient at it, creating it. You know what I mean? We haven't even scratched the surface on, you know, on the capabilities of a lot of this stuff, because a lot of it really it's a product of thought. It's a product from one's own mind as to what can be done with it. You know what I mean? But that all circles back to what you were just saying maybe about 15 minutes ago about starting at like the preschool level of integrating this type of stuff into the minds of children, so that when they become of age, they think it inherently. It starts somewhere, you know.
Anyone,
I definitely agree.
anyone who's learned database theory has discovered the cleverness of voice card normal form, the way we break down and elaborate data structure into small tables. It's all very elegant and efficient until you wait forever for a response to your SQL query filled with join commands. Most developer teams quickly learn to denormalize their databases to improve performance. In other words, they strip away all of the cleverness and stick the data in one huge table. It's kind of ugly and wasteful, but it's often screamingly fast. As for the bloat, this space is cheap. Once they start putting their education into practice, many developers spend a few years unlearning all of the mathematical cleverness from their CS course. This is very true. This is extremely true. They're teaching you backwards. They're teaching you at a time when computers were not as fundamental as they are now. You're talking about computers working at 4 and 8 bits back then. Today, computers operate at 64-bit. So that was 40 years ago. You can't teach them something from 40 years ago and think that that's going to apply today. It just doesn't work. And so you're paying to learn something that you're going to have to unlearn after graduation. And it's unfortunate that people are mostly universities and schools are actually wasting their time teaching from that perspective.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just about to ask you, what do you think about?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Exactly what this article is saying is very true. Like I've been going through training courses for SQL because I started that position. Well, that's the way they teach you, and that's the way I've learned just from looking at all the books over the course of a couple years since I've been in database. Yeah, they teach you to break out the data into multiple tables, and and I've learned in certain instances that um, creating like temp tables to pull in all the information into one table, or actually creating a just a big table with everything in it, is a whole lot faster than running all these joins, because it's a lot of it's dependent on where data is, and if it's in like a weird place, then it slows it down. It's a whole lot of factors that fall in line with writing the queries to pull the data. So yeah, with it being in one table, it's a whole lot faster. So I agree with that statement, and they need to stop teaching it that way.
That's what we call a data lake.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, we call it data lake, and Josh is right. Where the data lives is going to determine how fast and how progressive the speed of the query is going to be. And then your queries are much longer, because if you have data that lives in multiple places, then that also attributes to the length and duration for querying a table. And that's why you have sometimes you'll go to a certain website, you try to add something to the cart, especially a big website like Newegg or Amazon or something. Well, not so much as Amazon. Amazon has figured it out, but some of these older e-commerce sites, they use what Josh was saying earlier about the joining in these multiple tables. This is too much. Just create a big table and then use an algorithm that's going to pull from there. From that one area, that's almost instantaneous. I mean, we have terabytes of storage. Why do we care how much this usage you're going to use? Who cares? All right, institutions breed arrogance. We all think we're right, but the very nature of academic degrees are designed to give graduates the ability to argue one's superiority with authority. This may be true sometimes, but even on the best days, it's hard to know what's really right, especially in a fast-moving field. Yeah, people who come from Harvard, people who come from Yale, yeah, they tend to have a chip on their shoulder. That's what it is. So many modern skills are ignored. This is very true. We talked about this a lot. Some of the new languages like Go and React, Go and Python and stuff like that. That stuff gets ignored. The academic cutting edge is long in arriving. Yep. We talked about that earlier. Tenure can breed complacency. Yep. Can't teach an old dog new tricks is literally what they're saying here. Intellectualism rarely produces results. When I told one tenured faculty member that one of my students landed a job thanks to a few lectures on Angular and React, he smiled and said, the last thing I want to do is turn this into a trade school. Yeah, that's fine, but there aren't so many who can justify spending close to $500,000 on wondering whether polynomial or exponential angels can dance on the head of a pin.
Mike, what the hell were we just saying about 15 minutes ago?
Yeah, I know. The liberal arts tradition is a wonderful thing, but it encourages a disdain for practical knowledge. It's all about some deep, eternal truth. But when your company has to ship something next week by the deadline, no one has time to navel gaze and wonder about the eternal truth. This is very true.
I was just saying this shit. You want to prove a theory or a concept versus application.
Yep. So that's the issues. Maybe a computer science degree isn't for anybody anymore at this point.
We've been pushing the certs for a very good reason.
Yeah, people have told us that certs don't get you the job. I beg to differ. Go ahead, Josh.
Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, I just want to make it clear that, I mean, when I was stating what I was saying, about the teaching, they should. I was saying don't forget about the basics. I mean, they shouldn't leave out the basics or whatever. You still have to learn how things were done in the past, and because there are still companies out here that are running their databases and have multiple databases that are set up in that format. So I wasn't saying get rid of learning how they actually did it, or how it was done previously, and just basically improve upon it by adding to the training. You see what I'm saying? If that makes sense. I hope I'm making sense.
No, it makes sense what you're saying because you want a reference point. But what I'm saying here is that, and I think the article is kind of saying is that a lot of what happened back then doesn't really matter anymore because it's obsolete, right? We don't when GM or Ford or Chrysler wants to train people to work on the assembly line or manufacturing process, they don't go back and say, well, the Packard company, car company back in the day, run by 2 black men. This is how they did, the process. And then we brought in, this George Washington Carver, and this is how he told us the process. They don't really go over that, right? They just tell you what you need to know to do the work that is necessary right now. And so they don't really lament about the or reference, George Washington Carver, pre-George Washington Carver, anything like that. They just care about doing it now and going forward.
Well, I guess what I'm saying, I'm speaking along the small to medium business companies that are out here that don't have billions of dollars to invest in or millions of dollars to invest in the new technology and a new way of things going, and they have to have people that understand what the way their current databases are working and improving on it. So you see what I'm saying? So the old with the new, has to come together. You got to bridge that gap because there are still people out there, or still small and medium business that are still out there running their databases like that. You see what I'm saying? And I was just mainly speaking directly, I guess, to that.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Let me jump to this next one. I don't have a lot of time. This one is from blog Eileen Lerner. So she is a blogger in tech. Thinking about attending a coding boot camp, ask them these questions. I'll get straight to the questions. Do you ask people to leave before graduation if they are struggling? Does your job placement rate include just graduates? Is your job placement rate an average of all cohorts or just a few, the best ones? What is considered getting a job? Does it include people who are working on contract or part-time? Does it include people who are now TAs, teacher instructors, or instructors, teaching assistants or instructors at the boot camp? Does it include people who found work doing something other than software engineering? What is the median salary of grads, not just the average? And do those numbers include part-time work, other job titles, or full-time software engineers? For the students who ended up at FANG, what were their backgrounds? Were they electrical engineering majors, physics students? What portion of people who ended up at FANG didn't know how to code before doing the boot camp? What portion of your curriculum is dedicated to technical interview prep? So these are actually very good questions, right? Because many people walk into a boot camp without actually verifying that what they're getting themselves into is going to be actually worth their while.
Right, Josh, you said you went to a boot camp, right?
No, actually, I didn't. I've looked into it, and they always have stuff in the basically what Mike is finna say. They always have stuff in the fine print that doesn't explain exactly what you paying for, and if you should, and also what experience you should have before actually walking in the door. And they keep putting in that fine print because they want you $2,000 or $3,000 for the boot camp. So
Okay.
yeah.
No, that's actually it's actually right on point. Another question I would ask is, are these credits that I attain here at this boot camp, are they regionally accredited or nationally accredited, right?
Right, so they're transferable towards a degree or something.
Yeah, they're transferable to like a state school or something like that, right? So, because you may be able to apply these credits to, let's say, a what do you call it? A degree in nursing, your CRNA. You may be able to do something like that, or a BSN. You may be able to do that. You may have gotten a voucher for this boot camp and as a military vet, and you may be able to take advantage of it. But can I apply that to to an RN degree, or to a BSN, right? Who would have turned down a boot camp? I mean, who would turn down a boot camp if it was free, right? Speaking of free boot camps, there's one on YouTube. So, point that I'm making here is you got to ask the necessary questions. Don't just jump into something because it has some kind of diversity and inclusion picture of people who look like you with alphabet soup all in it, and you feel like that's going to be right up your alley. But in reality, you didn't ask the right questions. You didn't ask about the things that she's listing here. Aline is listing here, as well as are these credits transferable anywhere?
And Mike, the code, the free code camp or boot camp that you were referencing, is it free code camp?
I think so. Josh, you know what that
is that the one you were referencing?
Were you talking about on YouTube, right? When he said YouTube, so I was thinking like they got these channels out here that have like a boot camp.
No.
Actual video, right?
Free code camp.
Free code camp. Yeah. That's the one I was thinking. Yeah, free code camp, and that's the one I mentioned previously. Yeah. I don't know if there's a mod or maybe. Okay, let me go ahead. I'm gonna mute and I'll dig up the link and post it.
All right. Let me know if these questions help you in your adventures. Brave Heroes. Another resource you can use is the CIRR. They created a standardized request form that boot camps can use to report outcomes, and you can see outcomes from participating boot camps for second half of 2018. It's not everything, but it's a start. Yeah, this is true. Can't just jump into everything.
Yeah, Mike, if I could add to that though, I mean, I didn't go to a boot camp. I actually went to one of those technical schools, Remington College. And when I first walked in, I ain't gonna lie to you, I kind of fell for it. And I think I said this previously. It was almost like walking into a car lot with the sales guy and trying to sell you a car. And this guy was trying to sell me school, and I didn't do the proper research. I just said, well, let me just hop into this and try to see where it goes. I didn't, and my whole thing was actually going to this for a 2-year degree and then transfer to a state college, which didn't happen because it wasn't accredited.
Hey, Josh, I think that's maybe what I was talking about.
Yeah. And that's what made me
Okay.
think about it. I was like,
Okay.
yeah, that's what he's talking about. But I mean, fortunately, I was able to transfer majority of the credits to an online school, which worked out better for me because I was married with kids and all that stuff, trying to actually go through all this stuff.
The real
And
Al Bundy, huh?
yeah, pretty much. And yeah, and I ain't gonna lie, I got screwed, bro, and I ain't afraid to admit it. I mean, that's what happened. I mean, you live and you learn. At the end of the day, I'm glad you doing this though, and letting younger guys know that you need to ask these questions,
Mhm.
so y'all can learn from me, my mistake. You know what I'm saying, or um,
But you were
whoever
young.
wrote that article's mistake. You
Yeah,
know what I'm saying?
you were young though, Josh, right?
Yeah, I was young. I was 20, 22, 20. I mean, wasn't young, you know what
You
I'm
know
saying?
what
But I had just got back from the military and I was just like, oh, let me just I gotta do something. I mean, this military thing is cool, but uh
you know what it is, Josh, is that traditional schooling is not reasonable for a modern day millennial or zennial. And what I mean is that people have different responsibilities now than what they would have had before. You can't just go to school on campus anymore for a lot of people, man. So they gotta,
Yep.
either stay at home or they gotta work a 9 to 5 because they're trying to survive, man. And you're telling them that they have to, class starts at 9 a.m. It's like, yo, I'm an adult, man. Like I got other priorities, man.
Well,
Right?
Mike, I would say that
exactly.
probably started with us, dude. Like the young Gen X, where right, that kind of like that flex work environment type of thing. I think we were kind of like the test bed for that
Mhm.
because of what you just stated.
Mhm.
Unique living situations and stuff like that. Sort of like, dude, I totally have the capability to do this shit. I just have to do it from home. Because I remember back in late 98, 99, 2000, I remember there was this one chick. She was like she was this analyst position. I was working for a health insurance company, and she was in a really bad car accident, and it required some extensive surgery. She had to go through like about 4 surgeries. She had like a fractured skull, all kind of shit. And so at a certain point, though, like she was able to work, but she couldn't drive. Her doctor hadn't cleared her to do that because of the head injury, right? But she could sit at home and work. So she had this base. As she started getting better, they basically made steps for her to be there half the time, work from home half the time. Now you see an abundance of work from home positions.
Remote.
For huh?
Remote.
Remote, exactly. Virtual. you know so this is industry changing to the living environments of the modern day workforce.
Yeah, a lot of the call centers nowadays, and I know you guys probably know that, but they have most of them have gone virtual. I'll say they'll have like a main call center where most of the supervisors work, and then majority of the people that's actually taking calls from home. So
Mhm.
that's something that's changing or whatever a lot.
Mhm. All right, next item on the docket is from jacksonter.com. 2020 IT skills, what we learned from 782 coding tests. The IT job sector is growing, and with its growth comes a higher demand for programmers. What skills and programming languages should you focus on? Data from over 213,000 coding tests revealed some IT skills hiring trends to look for in 2020. See what DevSkillers data reveals about recent IT trends from 49 different countries. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics projects a stunning 25.6% increase in IT job growth in the U.S. in the next 10 years. This is actually corresponds with the article we read on Thursday from the McKinsey report. This growth in jobs means only one thing: more IT skills will be needed to keep up with the demand for growth. In 2019, over 213,000 coding tests were taken on the DevSkiller platform. A variety of companies from 49 countries use the test to screen, assess, and evaluate the coding abilities of potential new employees. This, of course, led to an astonishing amount of raw data. We went over this data with a fine-tooth comb and created the top IT skills report 2020, demanding and hiring trends. The downside of existing data about hiring is that it's based on surveys. They rely on self-reporting, which isn't always honest. DevSkiller's data, on the other hand, is raw and unbiased because it comes from your peers. So JavaScript is the most in-demand IT skill of 2020. Interestingly enough, we were talking about Python for 2019, so I'm surprised to see JavaScript is up there. JavaScript is at 40%. JavaScript is without a doubt an integral part of front-end software development. And there you have it. SQL is number 2. SQL is the backend. And then Java. And then HTML, CSS, so website creating. And then .NET, C#. So cross-system support. After JavaScript is SQL, Java, HTML and CSS, and .NET, with C# making the 5 most popular IT skills of 2020. Stack Overflow's 2019 developer survey also found JavaScript to be the most popular language amongst professional developers, thus explaining why it's so commonly used in our coding assessments. It's interesting to note that these IT skills are used in a much higher percentage of tests than they were last year. This does show that, in general, fewer companies are looking for developers with highly specialized skills. Developers with a wide range of skills are more versatile and therefore possibly in higher demand. This is very true. They've seen a lot more, so they can actually adapt themselves to different situations. React, Spring, C#, MySQL, HTML, data analysis with Python and Laravel are the most popular technologies in their respective tech stacks. So the tech stack actually includes other foundational skills or technologies involved in it to make it a stack. It usually goes from top to bottom. What's more important happens at the top than what's at the bottom.
Yeah, Mike, I agree with this article. Well, not agree, but this is it's an interesting article. And one thing I was gonna say, you still talk? Are you still going through the article? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm still going through it.
Go ahead and finish. I can say this at the end.
Latvian developers scored the highest, 54.65% on coding tests. Developers from Latvia scored the highest on coding tests. The Dutch come in next, 52.32%. Then Italy at 52.26%, Romania at 51.92%, and the Dominican Republic at 51.69%. Round out the top 5. This is interesting. The United States is not even involved in that. This data clearly shows that Latvian developers are talented, but there's more to the story. It suggests that recruiters from all over the world treat coding tests differently. How? Instead of making coding tests incredibly difficult, in some parts of the world, recruiters are using tests that better reflect the skills needed for the job. This could mean that developers are scoring higher on them. Yeah, this makes sense. Makes complete sense. A recent job study shows that over 2/3 of recruiters believe the lack of quality talent is the biggest challenge they face. When hiring for tech roles, this drought of talent is only amplified. This is great news for developers who can definitely benefit from this situation. It's worthy taking the time to see how the world hires people, hires developers, so that you can take advantage of this data when you consider changing jobs. Yeah, they're right about this. I was surprised to see the DR though. The DR is up in there heavy. Um,
Interesting.
well, I mean, we've covered this before about the need to learn JavaScript, the need to learn HTML, CSS,
Mm-hmm.
and SQL. So, but you also have to learn Unix because a lot of these programming languages operate on top of it.
Yeah, Mike, I was just gonna kind of joke, and at the beginning of the article when you read um, the data that they were using, that's all SQL. That's all I could think about. It's just, I mean, SQL is needed because of big data. So, yeah, along with all those other coding languages.
Yeah, I was surprised about DR too. Shout out to Passport Bro finding love in the DR. You know, he's in the chat right now. All right, this one. Go ahead. Your mic is breaking up.
No. I said nothing. There was a brother, he had gotten a position, and I was curious to know a little more about it. So I posted in the chat to come on, join the panel and talk about it. So yeah, man.
All right, this one is from Get Connected. What's it like to be a software engineer? A short story exposing the nature of software engineering. I like the pictorials. I think those are pretty dope. Your plan, and then here's the reality: all types of pitfalls and things you got to traverse and moats and shit like that.
Yeah, I've seen that graphic before, and that's the fucking truth right there.
That is so true, man. All right. I have been working as a professional software engineer for just around 4 years as I write this article. I love it. There are always new challenges and technologies which really keep me on my toes. Going through university, I had this grand idea of what being a software engineer would be like. My vision involved sitting at a whiteboard solving difficult algorithm problems while sipping coffee with my peers. While that may be the case sometimes, here is a story to show you what software engineering is really like. 3 months to add nickname. For the last 3 months, I have been working on a project for our business. I was asked to add a nickname feature to our software. Makes enough sense. Much of what we do involves interacting with our customers, and many people use nicknames instead of their real names. For example, someone named Robert may go by Bob. We want to make sure we call him Bob, but if we charge his card, we need to keep Robert on file because that is his legal name. Here is the breakout of how something as little as adding a nickname turned into a 3-month project. Interesting. The first step was to ensure our databases had the field required in order to be able to store a nickname. I had to do a bit of research here to find the places that first name was being held, as we would like the need to add a nickname there. Turns out there were several databases and tables with first name. After narrowing down which databases and tables had the first name field, I had to ask which really needed nickname. One of the tables used for data imports had the first name field. Then I had to reach out to those responsible for providing that data and ask if it even makes sense for them to add a nickname field on their forms. After a little back and forth, we decided that it didn't make sense to do so. After talking to all the people who might write to the field I submitted the RFC, request for change, ticket to our database admins. Within a day, they turned around and asked me if I had talked with a data analytics team about how this would affect their workflow. And if I had, look to see if adding any of this would affect any stored procedures they had in place. Needless to say, I had none. I worked with the DBAs, database admins, and analytics team for another week to ensure the field work was safe for their workflow, and then we moved the new fields into production. So what they're describing here is the backhand application update. So on the front end, 20% of its total work is 20 total effort is up front, and then in the back is 80% because it's very repetitive right in the back. You usually can't see beyond the GUI because you just don't have access to it. So in back end application updates happen. Next step was updating several of the applications that we have. One of our programs is used to match imports to existing accounts. Here I had to add a check to see if the first name field from the import matched any account's first name or nickname. If the match is strong enough, no further work needed is to be done. So I'm not gonna go through all of this, but phase 3 equals UI update, so user interface. What no one told me is that just how much red tape there could be to developing. Just because something sounds simple doesn't necessarily mean that is the case. Honestly, I love what I do, sure. There are different parts that are unexpectedly complex or dull, but they are outweighed by the challenges that it gets resolved. Software engineering is constantly evolving the field as well. So phase 1 is database updates, and then 2 is back-end application updates, and then 3 is a UI update. So this is actually a pretty logical order for a coder or a software engineer, but you know, that tells you just a glimpse in a person's day and what they do for a living.
Yeah, that's exactly right, man. I've actually done it. I mean, when I was working as a developer, yeah, that's some of the stuff I did every single day. I mean, especially building new front ends. Uh, if you coming in and you don't understand where the data is located and the naming convention that they use, because some people don't use standardized naming conventions across the databases. So if you change something somewhere, you got to change it everywhere, and in order for everything to work, because you could break, well, y'all know that you could break code, all that stuff. So um yeah, it's a day-to-day deal.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
Welcome. This Renaissance man.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, I had a
Hey,
question.
peace, brother.
Hey,
Peace, bro.
What's up?
I had a question for y'all. I know Mike was talking about basically IT evolving and people basically working remotely. Is that going to basically make with obviously the demand in IT? Are you going to see like people going going to India, things like that, hiring people and basically sort of depressing the wages?
No, that depends on what kind of job it is. So a lot of American jobs don't usually have people working remote if they're not American citizens,
Oh, okay.
right? So if you're looking at
Right.
sensitive financial data, government, government data, stuff like that, that stuff has to be looked at only by American citizens. You can't have foreign nationals all up in your system, in a place so far away that you can't even reach out and touch them.
Okay, so you don't think even
you
with,
got to think about it.
No, I was just going to say, you all
Go
don't
ahead.
even think with technology improving that that'll ever be a viable solution.
No, because it's
No, you have to. Go ahead, Mike. Finish up, bro.
It's an issue of legality. Who has the right to see this sort of data? Somebody in Delhi or somebody in Providence, Rhode Island? And are they U.S. citizens? And that's why if you fill out a job application, you'll see, regardless if you're a contractor, you're a full-time employment, FTE, it always asks you, are you an American citizen or not? That will determine whether or not you actually get to work remote. Now, can you outsource your lines of code that you need developed? Sure, you can outsource that, but there has to be controls in place so that that person doesn't steal your code and then go off to fucking Moscow and share with his buddies.
See, it's got to
Yeah.
work. It's got to work one of two ways. We can't operate in a gray area here, right? See, so you're either going to outsource your entire call center operations, right? Which means that it's going to be a physical location where people will be going into this environment where it's a controlled environment. What you can't do is have a situation where people are working from home in India. Do you realize the employment slippery slope that we start to enter into? You know what I mean? So the best option here is that if you're going to do it remotely, because you could still pay people to do the job in the United States and save money versus setting up an entire call center operation in another country. Get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But what we're not going to do is try to like extract the best of both worlds, because now you're creating a nightmare scenario that Mike was just mentioning. Okay, so perfect example
That
is
happens
that
all the time, bro.
it
That
happens exactly. Perfect example here is you get a lot of people, especially if you have like an iPhone or something, right? A lot of people will get phone calls from people claiming to be like a tech support agent, right? But they've got a thick Indian accent. Now, the thing about Apple is like, okay, well, look, none of our tech people are going to be calling you from India with a number that's not, the number that you see on the Apple website. See, so what if Apple did actually employ that method where they had all of their tech support people based in India? How would you know the difference between somebody calling you and scamming you and somebody who's an actual tech support person?
Gotcha.
Mhm.
No,
Yeah, One of the issues that I've seen over the years is that when they did do that, you had a foreign national go back to their country, with a USB thumb drive full of content, from the organization.
okay.
And,
So you think that's cut down? Because back in probably I guess the 2000s, that's all you do is you'd call a customer support line and you get someone from outside the U.S.
well, the customers determine the quality of that, right? So at the end, there'll be a survey at the end, and you'll determine the rate of the service, right? And if the service is on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst and 5 being the greatest, and you get a bunch of ones, you might want to change that region.
Yeah.
Rethink your strategy, right? Apple at one point was going to come up with an autonomous vehicle. Guess what happens when they hire some foreign nationals? They got all up in their system and took that data right back to their native land, and poof, Apple no longer has an autonomous vehicle coming out.
And that's why I was going to
compromised.
add, and it's nothing you could do about it legally.
Mhm.
So to avoid that, you know what I'm saying, just you can't do it. That's basically everything else said. Sorry.
So
Yeah.
that literally stopped them from having an autonomous car. Was someone stole their IP?
Industrial espionage.
Oh wow, I did not know that.
Exactly.
I know industrial. I know espionage.
Yeah.
That I just didn't know that happened with Apple.
Yeah, that happened over
Do
the
you
years.
realize how much of the work? Yeah. Do you realize how much of the work you just did for me?
Probably
Right.
what
Like
the design
if
you
I
got.
got a whole bunch of money.
Basically,
No, I
did
was
the
gonna say, if you
R&D.
got a whole bunch of money, just wait. What's that?
Basically, you've done the
What was
R&D
that?
for them. They just basically have to go and actually produce whatever you've developed or designed.
That's what I mean. Yeah. I got code. Right. Like thank you. You know what I mean? Thank you very much, Apple engineers. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a serious problem. But one of the major issues is that most of America's adversaries don't have extradition treaties for this, and what happens here is that bad guys get into your get into an American corporation remotely, because they're working remotely, you don't know who's looking over your shoulder at that computer. You don't know who's sharing that stuff with.
Exactly. Not only that, but see, once you start getting into things like tech support for companies that have things like wearables, right, that record health data. Mike, you already went down the HIPAA rabbit hole with that one.
Yeah, that sensitive PII
So
and things like that
it has to stay digital. Right.
cannot be seen by non, qualified resources. So, to your point, some areas can be outsourced, but that they've gone down that hole before, and that doesn't typically work very well for those companies. So
Now that's good to know. It sounds like if there's going to be this large demand in tech, that means you're going to have to fill it domestically, or unless you're going to go to the H-1B visa route and get a bunch of people to be naturalized citizens.
And this is why we push what we push.
Well, your H-1B visas are capped at 85,000. There are 1 million IT jobs that are unfilled right now. There are 1 million Black men that are unemployed.
And this is why we push what we push.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why we push what we push.
Nah, makes sense. Like I said, I was just curious. No, like I said, it makes sense. Like you're saying, this is why we push what we push. I was just curious that wasn't something that was going to come and sort of, sidetrack anything.
No,
That's good to know.
Oh, no. There's too many domestic policy barriers. And again, things like HIPAA, that's a main one. I mean, hell, that's a domestic barrier just with our own internal tech, our own national or domestic tech sector, with companies like Google. Mike, who did they just, what did they just do in the health services or the health provider sphere? Was it that they just Google did recently?
You mean Amazon or Google?
Did they acquire somebody? Or, well, I thought Google did something. I know we talked about Amazon, but essentially what's happening here, huh? They acquired Fitbit. Right. They acquired Fitbit. That's what it was. You see, so now you have tech companies that are acquiring device makers. You have Amazon creating their own health insurance companies. So now tech is it's embedding into an industry where HIPAA largely kind of determined, right, like the privacy measures. So you're talking about an industry that's fundamentally at odds with the concept of privacy, right? And then a industry whose backbone is the very basis of privacy. Make it make sense.
Yeah. Let me read this real quick.
Hey,
yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Mike, I just wanted to somebody was asking in the chat if anybody up here has been hired with just certs, and I wasn't sure if you had I know you say you had an associate's degree, right, or something like that.
I have a bachelor's.
Oh, bachelor's. I'm sorry, and I apologize. Did you get hired in IT with just certs at any point?
No, I was in IT long before I even had my bachelor's. And so I had cert before it, but I came from a contractor's perspective, and so by the time I got my my degree in cybersecurity, the industry was just taking off, and I was already experienced in IT, so it was
Okay.
So I have
Well, he was just asking. He was just asking, like, if you can get hired with just certs. If anybody on the panel,
you can. I'll say this.
Telling them that
going to vary. Your mileage is going to vary. You can't guarantee things like that here. That if you get a cert, you're going to get a job. That's not how it works.
Oh, and I wasn't guaranteeing that. I wasn't saying.
No. I think the question he was asking was, has anybody gotten hired in positions that I don't have any certs? I don't, but I got a whole bunch of like experience on my resume, right? So in lieu of having certs, it's what it is that I'll basically pass, like kind of like in the position that I have now, for example, right?
Mhm.
So what I did was I passed a whole bunch of like internal trainings, let's just say. Okay. And so that's basically what put me where.
And yeah, I wasn't making that point. It sounded like he muted. I wasn't making it. I wasn't basically saying that. Oh yeah, you get a cert, you get a job. You know what I'm saying?
I was saying,
Okay, yeah.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry. I did mute real quick. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry. I'll finish up after you.
no, I was just making the point that people come here and they ask me questions, and I see these type of questions all the time in the comment section after the live stream is over.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's why I wanted to kind of give some clarification.
No, this person is trolling. This person is just trolling. So I want to make sure that we stop answering.
Oh, he is? Oh, shit. Okay, never mind.
oh, sorry, my bad.
I was going
didn't
to ask,
know.
do you think it adds value though, Mike, coming from a background with a degree, then transitioning?
What do you mean?
Just like, you think it makes it easier to transition, or employers are going to look favorably on, hey, this person has a degree, and it will make you, A, if you're not in tech, easier to transfer, or B, if you do make that transition, employers are going to look a little bit more favorably on you versus someone who just has a bunch of certs?
It depends on what the job requires.
They'll always look. Yeah, I was going to say, like based on requirement, I mean, you're always going to look, and this is just coming from a recruiter, a former recruiter. You're always going to look favorably on, someone who's got a bachelor's, if it's closely related or similarly related, or if they got a bachelor's in say business, but then let's just say based on that bachelor's, they got a job working for a tech company. And what they did was they moved, you can follow like their work street, they moved into more of a tech sphere. Right. And then in interviewing them, you'll start to understand how they got to where they're at. Right. So that's where the interviewing process, asking the critical questions to really understand a person's experience.
I think he muted.
Yeah, I need to get to this next article.
Yeah, no, I finished because Mike needs to move on to the next article.
All right, next one is from techrepublic.com. Python, what to learn, where to learn it and why you should do it now. Several years in, Python remains the big kahuna in programming languages, as the IEEE Spectrum puts it, garnering the top spot on its annual list for 2019. Python's popularity is driven in a no small part by the vast number of specialized libraries available for it, particularly in demand in the domain of artificial intelligence, the IEEE said. Python consistently receives top billing and rankings, mainly because it is one of the easiest programming languages to learn because it reads like English, industry observers said. This makes Python a good choice if you're thinking about learning a coding language. Why learn Python? Python is growing in popularity for statistics, data visualization, and other types of research that involves large data sets, according to Bennett Garner, a back-end engineer at Cube, a financial planning company. If you're interested in programming, Python is a good first language to learn, he said. It's still growing in popularity, especially for data-intensive applications. In his work, Garner uses Python for Cube's web server, the Django, background worker task, and any scripting the company needs. Often that involves calculating thousands or tens of thousands of financial data points across a various model, scenario, and time vectors. It has a relatively simple, clean syntax that's easy for non-programmers to learn and understand, he said. So the learning curve for Python is less steep than for statically typed languages that often involve a lot of boilerplate code like Java. This is very true, but Java is a system level language. There is also a strong open source community for Python packages, he said. Developers are all commonly using Python for implementation in hot technology areas like machine learning, artificial intelligence, and data science. and making students and others who learn the language highly marketable, said Karen Panetta, an IEEE fellow. However, the value of the language is not just for scientists and engineers, Panetta added. It's advancing the digital humanity so that it is becoming the language for the non-nerds too. This is true. Another reason to learn Python is that the language has a rapid ramp-up time, so students can quickly learn to write programs that provide instant gratification with the impressive visualizations of the results, Panetta said. Colleges and universities use Python in their first year programming courses to engage students, which implements retention, which impacts retention, especially for women and other underrepresented groups in the engineering and sciences discipline, she said. Keep in mind that Python is slower than other traditional languages and not as efficient when speed is important. So it may not be ideal for a mobile app or in game development, Panetta noted. Google recently launched a new training course for US job seekers to learn Python. We covered this a few weeks ago. The course, the Google IT Automation with Python Professional Certificate, is free for a 7-day trial and then costs $49 per month.
Oh, word?
It is being run by the online education company Coursera. Yeah, we covered this already. There are lots of online courses, and IEEE has chapters around the world that are constantly offering short courses and workshops in Python, Panetta said. For instance, my own Boston IEEE chapter, which I'm a member of myself, offers a short course in Python and uses it for applications in signal processing and for wireless communication. The best resources, Garner says, he has seen on learning basic programming principles come from Harvard's CS50 course. David Milan is an excellent instructor in the course, walks students through fundamentals of computer science. The course does not start with Python, but by the end, you'll be writing complex Python web applications and you'll have an understanding of why computers work the way that they do. Yeah, this is very true. This is like pre-CS 101. If you want to make yourself marketable, it's the language to learn, said Panetta. If you want to just learn to program, it's a wonderful first language to learn. It's free and easy. This is very true. We've covered this many times on here. I know there's a few people who are part of, who are subscribers here who do write in Python. So.
Yeah, and just to add, I'm working with it every day. Whenever I have a little free time, I play around with it. Like right now, I'm looking at list, just working with list from like JSON files, trying to pull data from JSON files and put it into a list and all that. So I mean, it's pretty cool, man. Just work at it and try to learn the language. You know, it's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we gone over the Google IT announcement, I think a few weeks ago.
Yeah, we did. Now that I think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I know that initially when they ran that Google IT support certificate, they were pushing that predominantly Black areas, and that was kind of interesting because I think at the end of some of these trainings they were giving away these Chromebooks, which is interesting, and so that's a way for them to push Chrome, the Chrome OS onto a lot of people.
Well, I was gonna say, man, look, guys got to understand something, right? You can be a consumer and you can also be a producer, okay? You can be either one of them. All right, what Google understands is that, look, there's a lot of Black people who use Android. So that means there's also potential for a lot of Black people to develop shit off of that platform. Okay. What they understand also is that not a lot of those people are doing that right about now. So what if, crazy idea, right? That they started to cultivate a development platform in a specific demographic of people. Guess what that does? There's more apps, there's more applications, there's more people thinking of ways to utilize Google's platform. This is what they need in order to maintain a market share. Okay. We have to stop looking at this from the position or this view that you're somehow not in the purview of things. It really requires your participation. I mean, yeah, I can look at you as a potential development partner, but I can only do that from my position, right? You have to see yourself as a partner as well. I can't just look at you like that. You have to see yourself as that, and you have to see me as a partner. So here's what I'll do. I'll go ahead and make measures to kind of extend the olive branch, but it's incumbent upon you at that point.
All right, let me go to the next item on the docket is from techrepublic.com. System admins checklist, 10 tasks to perform every year. As system administrators, we are tasked with the ongoing administration and management of employee client computing devices, whether they are standalone computers connected directly into the LAN, mobile devices for telecommuters, or a veritable army of tablets and smartphones connected to the WAN through public Wi-Fi networks, or particularly dubious hotspots. The start of a new year is the best time to make sure all of your ducks are in a row. We got a lot of ducks around here too. Number one, verify disaster recovery plans work. Disaster recovery plans work, right? The belief is often banded around, but the true test is the response to a disaster. If disaster recovery plans don't work, there is still time to correct them before a major incident. If there is not an effective disaster recovery plan in place, there's no time like the present to start the conversation. So DR planning changed after 9/11. And I think I've talked about this before, but I think we can keep reiterating this point. When those buildings collapsed in New York, there was no way they didn't really test their DR functionality. And so when disaster actually struck, they were screwed. They lost a lot of hard drives and data. That stuff is crushed. There was no way they were going to get that back. And so the ability to test your disaster recovery plans is very, very important, because an incident like 9/11 happens, or a flood like Katrina happens, and your systems are right there on the ground level. Even in New York, there were many companies who had their server systems at the ground level during Hurricane Sandy. I think that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
In New York, and water seeped through the streets and right into some of these buildings and washed out their data centers. They were fucked.
Yeah, flooded their servers out.
Well, because they was under the impression that this would never happen. This would never happen. Recently Turkey had an earthquake. Some of their computers and whatnot, their telecom closets and data centers were in a disaster zone. You had a whole bunch of server racks fall over, destroyed. Systems are destroyed. What do you do in a situation like that? That's where sysadmins and sysengineers and guys like Josh, guys like Christian Maddox, man, that's where these guys come in at. They get that phone call, they get that text message in the middle of the night, a SEV 1 alert. You're screwed. You're already playing catch up. So you have to test your DR plans on a frequent basis, usually quarterly, that you test your DR plans. And you need to add some automation to it, because if something does happen, then you need to be able to shift your resources over in the event that it does happen, and you're not playing catch up. You don't have to wait for human interaction. All right, number 2 is rolling out operating system upgrades. This is by far one of the simplest tasks to perform, given the multitude of software applications available. Mobile devices are those communicating over less than ideal connections will take some added effort to complete successfully. Given your clients fresh systems for the new year will give them a bit of extra pep in their step. Yeah, this is true. I mean, if you're still stuck on Windows 7 now, good luck. Service call equipment and order replacement parts. Scheduling a service call appointment or ordering replacement parts for failed components or those in danger of failing will save you time. Some service contracts build in visits from the vendor to assess equipment and determine if any issue exists, kind of like an engine backup, an engine checkup by a certified mechanic. If issues are found, the vendor can often facilitate servicing these devices promptly and effectively or efficiently with little involvement from IT, freeing them up to focus on the other tasks. Yes, it's true. Got to get your logistics game up for sysadmins. You always got to have enough RAM and motherboards. And what we used to do, what I used to do is I used to have multiple laptops on the network, and they were always in a temporary state. The images were built on it, but all it was waiting for was a user to actually log into it. That was just in case somebody dropped their laptop or someone spilled some coffee on it, as usual. Because the difference between coffee and water is that water getting inside of a laptop, you can wait for that stuff to evaporate out. But once you add condiments and stuff like that, like sugar and other sort of spices and stuff, that's it. The motherboard is ruined. So you can't really recover that fast. And so you got to have a laptop ready and ready to go within a few minutes so that the user can actually recover quickly.
Right. With water, you can clean the corrosion off of a board.
Most computers have what they call spill proof. So you can spill a little bit of water on there, like a splash from an ice cube or something like that. We used to have this user back in the day, man, who every morning he would get some iced coffee, and he would sit right in front of his computer, and he would dunk the ice in the coffee, and the coffee would splash right onto the keyboard every single day.
What a dumbass, dude. Like, just do it off to the side.
You have to understand who you're dealing with in these environments. They're not the sharpest spoons in the drawer, so to speak. So and so this is what you run into. You run into people who do this, and until Lenovo, I think it was Lenovo or HP came back and said, we're not going to warranty these sort of systems anymore, because we find, that these are user errors and not actually system malfunctions, right? They're not a fault of the manufacturer. It's a fault of the user. And so once we started saying, hey, next time this issue comes back, it's going to come out of your pocket, that stuff stopped. Those incidents stopped. So check server health and performance. Yeah, I mean, everyone should have a dashboard set up for server health, dips in bandwidth, spikes in bandwidth, temperature, things of that nature. Those sort of parameters should always be alertable. So you should be alerting on all of these sort of parameters. I don't know how Josh may run his environment, but for me, I'm always looking at spikes and network bandwidth and activity and things of that nature. Too many failed attempts, and whether or not a processor is running hotter than it should in the middle of the night. There's no reason why a processor should be running hot at 3 o'clock in the morning. There's nothing going on.
Right. I was just about to ask you too, is temperature spikes part of those parameters?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, because if there's something happening, then you're gonna see CPU activity spike, but that shouldn't happen at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, unless there's a backup going on. But backups usually happen in
That's when backups happen, when there's low activity.
no, it happens anytime there's a change, right? So we change, we back up on the fly. So
Okay, okay.
every time a file is modified, that system is already backing up.
Right, right. With
Same with
Apple, yeah, with Apple, it's going to be backing up when there's a detection that there's low activity.
Well, that's too late, right? So if something happens while there's high activity and they don't back up until there's low activity and there's a disruption in service, you're kind of screwed.
Well, low activity is going to determine though, like a few criteria. Basically, that it's not in use, right? So that's going to be the time when it'll do it, and Wi-Fi, you know, and adequate power. So those are going to be like the 3 criteria for. I mean, now I would imagine though, we're talking about like, okay, I guess on a consumer device level, yeah. On a commercial or you know, on a corporate level, no. In what you're talking about, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you don't do nightly backups when, you know, activity's low, business activity's low, or no. Systems critical, mission critical type shit. No. Every time there's a goddamn change. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, number 5 is perform preventative maintenance. Yeah, if you have a legacy data center, you may do quarterly server cleaning. So that means you got to come in there with a paintbrush and some compressed air.
Clean out the dead rats.
Yeah, anything in there. I've seen systems shut down because the fan can't spin because there's too much dust pumped up in there. It's just one of those things, preventative maintenance, tidying up cables and whatnot. Um, verifying that all the cables actually work, and uh, you know, uh, any sort of warranty, any devices that are coming out of warranty. Usually, you don't want to wait till the last day. You want to try to get there at least 90 days before it goes out of warranty, because you don't want to wait until the last minute to try to get an RMA on a hard drive or some memory or something like that.
Right, if you got to replace it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Update licensing agreements. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a biggie right there, man. That's a big one.
Yeah, sometimes back in the day, you used to be able to buy like Windows NT with like 5 cows on it. So 5.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Client. Josh, what does a cow mean again?
Is he there?
Shoot, to be honest, I don't remember, but I know the term. I've said it.
Client access. Client
License?
access license. I think that's what it stood for. But
Yeah.
cows are different now. Cows actually go by your CPU cores. So how many cores you have, not by how many users you have, because or you didn't have multi-core systems back then. You just had one processor or 2 processors, and it didn't matter how many sockets you had. It just mattered how many users were going to be on it. Now that you have these multi-core CPUs, you have Microsoft making bundles of fucking money off of this, man. Because you buy a nice high performance $100,000 server, $200,000 server, that thing probably has 4 sockets in there, maybe 2 sockets in there, but multiple cores in there. And so you might have two dual 8-core systems, which is 16 cores altogether.
Yeah, that's why virtualization is so important. You can set up that's why a lot of people use Linux as well as the main operating system, and then virtualize it and run Windows on top of it and specify the core amount to the actual server.
Mhm.
As a way to get around it. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, no, that's actually true. Number 7, ensuring monitoring tools are updated. We talked about that earlier. I know most people use SolarWinds. There's other tools that you can use out there. Number 8 is run hardware inventory and system health reports. A concise hardware inventory helps IT know what systems are where, while the system health checkup helps determine the status of these nodes, whether they are missing any updates or require a tune-up or hardware replacement. We talked about that earlier. Knowing the status of your inventory. Analyze logging output for hitting issues. All devices generate logs, and IT can't possibly read through every log generated on every device, or we never get anything accomplished. Lucky for us, syslog service exists, and their job is to correlate all the logs into one centralized location and sort through the entries to determine which are critical and should therefore be acted on immediately, and which logged items require a less than immediate response. So yeah, that's what dashboards are for. That's what we look at. So our dashboard is going to tell us what we want to know, and not just a whole bunch of unreadable garbage. Perform patch and change management. That goes without saying. So this is the IT checklist for sysadmin checklist for 2020.
Good shit. Good shit.
Yeah, one thing you was talking about earlier, yeah, that I'm glad they put disaster recovery up there as number 1. And because that's very important. I know you brought it up, with the whole 9/11 thing. I just wanted to, double tap on it. That's very important to have some form of off-site backup and all that. So, you know.
All right, this is from datacenterknowledge.com. Intel engineer, much left to solve before cloud and edge can become one. We're familiar with the phrase cloud native, perhaps enough now to consider it stretched about as thinly as streusel batter. It doesn't mean any application that lives in the cloud. It means a workload designed to run on a cloud platform, often created on the same platform where it will run. Kubernetes is a project on the cloud native computing foundation, which is part of the Linux Foundation working on issues around such workloads. So if a workload is edge native, what should this entail? If the edge is another cloud, indeed, vendors in this space do refer to an edge cloud, that at least theoretically distributing workloads to edge data centers should be no more difficult than a cloud deployment. In a perfect world, any service mesh, a virtual network that connects Kubernetes orchestrated services to functions that will consume them, should work just as well for services hosted in edge environments. But edge data centers, as data center knowledge has been explaining, will have somewhat different purposes and missions than cloud data centers. They'll host small handfuls of mission critical workloads that require minimal latency and, in many cases, maximum reliability, because they are not being housed in centralized facilities. Their function will often determine their location. There probably won't be full-time IT personnel on site, so the entire operation cycle will need to be administered remotely. Edge data centers are much more resource constrained than core cloud data centers. Srinivasa Rao, Intel's chief principal cloud and edge software security architect, explained during a recent panel discussion at KubeCon in San Diego. We are talking about one single server load per edge site. So any service mesh technology we're thinking should work in constrained environments like edges. Secondly, edges are physically insecure. You don't have security guards manning edge locations. This is true. The third thing is they do not have many times static public IP addresses. Without static IP addresses, microservices distributed across multiple edge locations cannot talk to each other. You have to consider in my mind, these three characteristics in figuring out what kinds of challenges and solutions you require in service meshes working for edge locations. Adapali painted a verbal image of a real-world distributed data center architecture where servers at the edge do not behave like parts of a broader cloud. From a networking standpoint, edge servers rely on so-called edge gateways that negotiate for IP addresses using protocols like DHCP. Network virtualization creates a necessary abstraction between virtual and physical IP addresses, but the abstraction becomes far more difficult to reconcile than when the underlying physical addresses are themselves dynamic. So this is very true. So you have to study software-defined local area networks and really to understand how this actually all is put together. The first edge-based micro data centers with any significant chance of market success are those designed to be deployable almost automatically. These self-provisioning kits will set up everything needed to become addressable and remotely administrable. This probably means their Kubernetes cluster will be self-contained environments by default, with the option to become segments of broader cloud-based clusters. I'm not going to read this whole thing, this is pretty long, but it's a little bit more detailed than what I wanted to go into today. But the purpose of the edge is to bring processing of IoT, Internet of Things, closer to the endpoint. And so having all these billions of devices, millions of devices locally trying to communicate out, need to process all this information way before it gets to the cloud itself. The cloud is a long way and nobody knows where it's being processed anyways because it's in the cloud. You're not supposed to know where it's being processed. You just know that it's being handled by a service vendor, whether it's AWS or Azure or something.
I mean, I think the cloud stuff, it's kind of like, you know, the way you can look at it is cloud would be like taking a highway, a long distance, and edge computing is taking a street road, a short distance, right? And so at a certain point, you're gonna, if you need to go a long distance, you're gonna take the street route to the freeway or highway or whatever you guys call it, expressway, and then on, right? See, so the edge computing side of things, that road infrastructure, the street infrastructure, that's a big thing because you're starting to have more traffic on the streets, if you will. So now edge computing is now becoming, you know, a whole entire ecosystem in and of itself. Like, how do we accommodate all of the traffic on the streets? Not specifically on the highways, right, leading out to the cloud, but on the streets, getting to the highway to get to the cloud.
All right, this is from Forbes.com. Microsoft is winning the the cloud war against Amazon report. Microsoft is now the most popular cloud services supplier and is steadily gaining market share against major competitors like Amazon, according to a new survey from Goldman Sachs about the current state of a trend that is reshaping the technology industry. The cloud computing wars are just getting started with plenty of potential market share to still go around. Around 23% of IT workloads are now on public clouds, and that number will reach 43% in 3 years. according to the Goldman analyst. The becoming cloud services market on the whole is likely to balloon to a valuation of up to $1 trillion. AWS reported $9 billion in revenue last quarter. Microsoft didn't report specific quarterly revenue for Azure, but one analyst estimated that it was about $4.3 billion. With cloud software proven to be a booming new trend in the tech space, that will lead to even more competition between big layers, such as for the $10 billion Pentagon JEDI contract early this year, where Microsoft won out the deal over Amazon. With Azure's popularity and growing momentum in the cloud services space, Wedbush analyst Daniel Ives and Strecker back predict that Microsoft and its CEO Satya Nadella will win the next stage of the cloud war against Bezos and Amazon in 2020. They're talking about this year. So that being said, it would behoove a lot of people to actually start studying for Azure certifications. You know, I talked about this last year that, 2020 is going to be a breakout year for Microsoft in cloud. And I see them outmaneuvering AWS by 2022 because a lot of companies that were stuck on Windows 7 and start moving to Windows 10 this year, and then they'll upgrade their legacy infrastructure to like Microsoft Azure Active Directory in the cloud. That's going to make it hugely easy for them to scale. And so they can just spin up services in Azure with a few mouse clicks and it's game over for Amazon. Not that Amazon's a bad company, but this was bound to happen. Microsoft was going to resurge at some point. Amazon had been doing this since the late 2000s, so around 2007, 2008, they were already in the cloud. Microsoft hadn't reached that point yet. It was still legacy as a company. I see them. They're already researching back with Azure. That was the whole purpose of Azure, was to research back Office 365, other SQL services, blockchain as a service. They're coming back, and I don't think that Amazon really has a full response for this. So I would say study Microsoft Azure as soon as possible.
Yep, and I definitely agree. I was saying that as well. That I mean, Microsoft, it all makes sense for it to be on Microsoft Cloud or Azure, because I mean it's their products. It's gonna run better. They're gonna have it set up better. So I mean I agree with you guys a while back when you said that it's gonna go full circle and come back around to Microsoft, because that's who creates everything that these people are using. Active Directory, it's all built in Azure. So I mean, only makes sense.
Yeah, from an enterprise standpoint, but from an academic standpoint, maybe AWS and Google Cloud will prevail because you don't necessarily need Windows anymore in the academic environment. Like so, K through 12, you can use a Chromebook, and all your software as a service is going to come down anyway, so it doesn't matter where it comes from. But if that's the SaaS is going to be delivered from Google or Amazon, that's going to be critical because it's going to be more cost effective for a school that's on a budget. To actually just buy into a cheaper service, especially if it's coming from Google. They're not really tied in with, a bias for Microsoft because they don't need it anymore. Before you would have needed a, Office, CD or DVD to install and the licenses to go with it. Now you have Google Suite, you have Gmail, you have Google Docs, you have other free services that you can use as a student and as a school to actually integrate into your learning system. I think, Josh, you talked about your kids are homeschooled as well remotely. So all of that's going to change. All of that's going to change. So I don't see Amazon and Google going away quietly, but I do see Microsoft, becoming an 800-pound gorilla.
Yep, I agree, man. And to be honest, it seemed like to me, Well, I always looked at AWS and Google Cloud as a platform for up and coming tech businesses or businesses that are just starting. Um, and I know it's not just that, you know what I'm saying, but I always looked at those cloud platforms as sort of like an open source, I mean, I know you're paying for it, but kind of a platform for outside of proprietary software. Um, so I don't know. If that makes sense.
No, everybody's moving to something free because they can't afford anything anymore. It's not, they don't have the budget.
Mhm.
They spent all their money on fancy computers with half-eaten apples on the back of it. So now you suffer. All right, this one's
And
go ahead.
I was just gonna add, and you can, I mean, it's cheap to develop on those platforms as well, on those cloud platforms, because you only pay for the data that you're, using. So if it's not being used and you're just developing it, you're only paying like dollars. I mean, it's the same thing with Azure as well, but same. I mean, AWS. I always looked at it as one of those platforms where smaller companies hopped into. I'm sorry. Go ahead though.
No, it's fine. All right, this one is from tripwire.com. AWS versus Azure versus Google. What's the difference from a cloud security standpoint? When the mainstream cloud computing first began to appear on the horizon, Amazon launched its Elastic Compute Cloud product in 2006. So I was wrong. I said 2008. Many organizations were initially hesitant to entrust their most valuable data and processes to a technological innovation named after something that appears to so delicate. Oh, how times have changed. Today, an estimated 96% of organizations use cloud computing, with over 80% of operate in multi-cloud landscapes thanks to a range of benefits that include efficiency, scalability, flexibility, mobility, disaster recovery, and security. As organizations continue to transition more of their computing infrastructure to cloud environments, the decision on what provider to use commonly comes down to the big three: Amazon Web Services versus Microsoft Azure versus Google Cloud Platform, GCP. At one level, the clouds are a metaphor for heavily fortified data centers that feature maximum security prison levels of physical protection, including dual authentication systems, vehicle access barriers, high resolution cameras, laser beam intrusion detection systems, biometric iris scanners, electronic access cards. A closer look at cloud security, despite some early hesitancy on the part of leading technology dependent organizations to move to the cloud computing market is becoming let me look on in. According to 2018 Q4 numbers from the industry analyst Canalys.com, the market share leaders are Amazon Web Services at 32%, Microsoft at 16%, and Google Cloud at 9.5%. That's actually a pretty different number than what I've seen before. But when it comes to cloud security, there are three critical aspects to consider. According to Harish Kavani, founder and CEO of Zimmer, a San Francisco-based cloud consulting and agile software development services company, physical security, infrastructure security, and data and access security. So the latter of this is actually very important because this will point to how Capital One was breached last year. However, the cloud providers have little control over the third aspect, data and access security. Like I said, instead, application level security is typically the user's responsibility. Around 80% of breaches occur because this third part is not very well secured. To alleviate the risk, he recommends that clients encrypt their data and databases, ensure that user privileges are correct and deploy features such as cybersecurity scanners that monitor for threat scenarios, vulnerability, or risk assessments and intrusion detection. The fact that cloud users bear considerable responsibility for the security component is known as the shared responsibility model. A Tripwire article distinguishes between security of the cloud and security in the cloud. So who's responsible for what and what is the outcome of the responsibility? Within this scenario, it is incumbent on the customer to ensure that they continue to meet their security, governance, and compliance requirements. The CSP may be able to protect against brute force login attempts, for example, but it's the customer's responsibility to ensure that employees use unique and secure passwords across all cloud services to minimize the risk of an account compromise. So all the bad guys need is access to one account that has a weak password and they're in. So they don't need to physically break into someone's computer. They just need to know what that user's credentials are. It's human nature that people tend to reuse the same password over multiple different systems because they just need to remember. Their brain can only remember so many passwords at a time because passwords tend to be very complex, and they want to simplify it because that's human nature on their behalf.
Hey, so Mike,
Yes, sir.
so wouldn't changing passwords every so many days or 90 days or so forth, wouldn't that increase safety?
To an extent, that used to be the case. But what happens when bad guys send a phishing attack, a phishing attempt to a said user? They looked up these people. They probably hung around in the downtown area on Wall Street or something like that. They saw these guys at lunchtime in the summertime with their badge out, walking around. You work for Liberty Mutual, you work for JP Morgan, your name is on the badge, your face is on the badge. Bad guy collects all that data, visual data, goes on Google, goes on LinkedIn, especially LinkedIn, looks up this person, and then starts doing his reconnaissance. He figures out that you got a Facebook. He figures out that you got an Instagram page. He creates a fake Instagram account or a fake LinkedIn account. He friends you. He starts following you around. He starts doing a little bit more digging through the deep web. He sees that you like to go to certain websites and whatnot. And so he sends you especially if you look at a person's LinkedIn profile, you'll see whatever kind of services they use, whether it's SAP or Salesforce or something like that, sends you a phishing attempt to your email, your corporate email. You click on it like an idiot, enter those credentials in there. He's capturing all this data. Once you put those credentials in there and it says, you must reset your password. Oh, okay. I got your regular password now. Now I'm going to go log into that system. Game over. Got you.
Yeah, I've had phishing attempts happen with me. I mean, I had one even come from it came from not Google, Apple, and but I saw the logo was looking real crazy, and I read what they had to say to you. You're getting ready to get blocked out. You got to do this. You got to do that. I just totally hit it as spam because I knew it was a scamster. But and I've seen that also try to come into my Facebook account where is that you in your picture? Is that you? And you try to click on that, and you already know that these guys are scamsters. So I see this shit all the time, man. It's crazy. Folks have made mad attempts to try to get at the old boy, but it's insane.
Everybody, everybody's going to be a potential victim at some point. It's just a matter of who, not a matter of when, not a matter of if. It's just who. And that's why we have to do security awareness training to put more emphasis behind a lot of these things. And it doesn't always have to be a phishing attempt. Social engineering is very, very sophisticated. They usually use white women because white women are so, because of the inherent structural bias and racism in this country, white women are able to snake their way into organizations and even hook up with a guy through Tinder or something like that. She's in his house. He left his laptop open while after he finished getting domed out by her. And now she's on his laptop, his corporate laptop.
Yeah, bro, that shit is crazy. But
Yeah.
you're definitely right about that.
Now she's all over the systems. Now she captured all that data. Now she put it on a USB thumb drive, dumped it, and then sent that off to Iran or China or whatever adversary is going to pay a high dollar for it. These people make millions of dollars doing this.
It's the Russian. You see, I was told by a policeman who I know here. These Russian women. I'm sorry, I don't.
They're nationalists. Yeah, they're nationalists.
But they're big here in New York, man. Ooh. But and I'm not trying to castigate any one group, but it seems as though that they've got this thing down. And I mean, and these Russians are very, very, very sophisticated with respect to this, and these women play a big role in that.
Yeah, look at during the Obama administration, a lot of the Secret Service members were caught, intoxicated with these prostitutes, these escorts.
Well, those guys went down to Colombia. Those rookie ass dudes. I saw that. Me and a couple of my boys were laughing about that. Just how whack and sucker laid these guys were. But I know. I know Colombia pretty well. I've been down there a few times. I was down there back in 2017. But yeah, that's ill. It's ill. These guys are just rookies.
Yeah, but the point that I'm making is that those women extracted a lot of critical data from those guys, right?
Sure did.
So that happens. Social engineering happens on that level, and that's how people get exploited from a corporate standpoint.
Yeah.
Somebody else was going to try jumping in. Was it Mike?
Yeah.
Put some volume on your mic, bro.
How you guys doing? Happy Super Bowl weekend.
What's going on, man? What's going on, fam?
Niners, baby.
Hey, it's happening.
Sir.
So I wanted to jump in on that security side. What you guys were saying. What I'm seeing in my school district, I'm resetting anywhere from 10 to 15, maybe 20 accounts a day because of the spoofing that's happening. These guys are spoofing the leadership of the school district. So the principals, the superintendents, and all that. They only need one email address.
You mean they're phishing them?
Well, no. Well, okay. What they're doing is if they get one email address off of LinkedIn or something, they can find out what emails the school district is using. So like how like for instance, my school district ends with tusd1.org.
Mm-hmm.
So once they go on LinkedIn or Indeed or any of that, and they get one email address, they can go online and find out who the leadership is of the school district. So we got 89 schools. So all they're doing is going in and then they start emailing as the superintendent. They spoof the superintendent or whatever. And yeah, it's a phishing attempt, but they're sending an email, making it look like it's coming from the leadership. So automatically, the teachers and stuff like that are responding to these emails, and then giving up some information. And so they're giving up information left and right. And so we're resetting passwords day in and day out. And we have an automated password reset process. But it's on the security side, you really got to be careful. And being a Microsoft organization, we have, the cloud, the Azure and all that going on. It costs too much to try to switch away, like how you guys were saying earlier, to go to Amazon or to go to Google Cloud or something like that. Once you're embedded, say again?
No, because you already invested into it.
Oh yeah, and they're paying they're upwards of $1 million a year when they're paying for these company services, or so many $1 million for such a 3 to 5 year contract or whatever. And so the security side, that's definitely something for these guys to get into. Like the dude was asking about the security and getting a degree and all that. I would say if you can start and get in on the ground floor, the security is only building because of all this cloud, everything moving to the cloud and stuff like that. They're going to be looking for a lot more security guys heavily because of the amount of people that are now getting into the cloud. The school districts are now in the cloud. We got 64,000 students in my school district. So
it's a lot. It's a lot.
Oh yeah. So all those students, that information has to be protected. and you can't have one or two people anymore doing security.
I mean, Yahoo had a big security breach, and they got settlements going out on that right now, and all this craziness. So I've seen like some fairly sophisticated, or online mediums that's supposed to be really secure, and stuff is just getting banged out. It's crazy. So.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. But the thing is, security is being automated now. That's what we, I do. I automate security. But the thing is, security at that level involves a lot of tools that's going to be necessary. So tools is going to be way more important than human resources, because you have more human resources, but you have no real process on how you address incidents like this, right? So what you're describing is whale fishing. So someone's going after, the CEO or the head or a high value target, which is the superintendent. Yeah, they're going to try to use him and then create a water hole, basically to have all of the subordinates fall into that, and then they'll give up enough information. The most common one is like a gift card. Your phishing attempt from the a high value target says, hey, can you go, hey, Mike, can you go down to CVS or whatever, go get me a gift card for $100 or something like that, or $50, usually something small. Smaller numbers usually work better across greater victims. And so you go out and actually go get that $50 card, and you actually go wire it to whoever the threat actor is, and therefore you've now been compromised in that way. Now, do you have to report something like that to the government? No, because there was no loss of data. But it is egg on your face, because the bad guys got you. Then there's some very sophisticated attempts at spoofing people, like you were saying. You can capture someone's voice, especially like a high value target like a superintendent making a speech at an event or a press release or something like that. Bad guys can break down his voice in multiple segments and create, all types of phone calls just with that.
So Mike, I know you're right about that, because my mom, this was a while back, she was at a crib and she got a call from somebody saying it was my son, her grandson, and he was in trouble. He was in some accident out in Arizona. I had been out to Arizona, and all that, but involved in the business out there and the whole game. But yet it was my son who was supposed to be calling her, and he was in some trouble, and they needed to wire money. Don't tell anybody else. And she called me up. I was like, no, it's just not. What is this? I says, don't do anything. Don't send him anything. Don't do anything. Don't even talk to these guys. She said it was his voice. And I was like, it couldn't have been his voice. Couldn't have been. So I'm sitting there saying, did they find it? Was he talking on something that may have caused this to be? It was the craziest thing, but it was something really ill, and almost had her going. She was almost ready to send some money out there. I was like, why didn't you call me? Oh, I didn't want to say anything. They told me that, keep it quiet. I was like, what? It was an unbelievable scam. Almost worked. Almost had my mom going. Yeah, almost had her going, man.
Yeah, it's just like what I do with my videos or whatever. I mean, I mess up in every video I record multiple times, and I have to cut it out. So it's the exact same thing, just cutting out different pieces of it. Once you get a recording, just cut them pieces up, chop them up, put them together, and the editing software will help you smooth it out so it sounds like it's on the same tone level and everything. Yeah, it can be done.
The new software that they have now, the bad guys are using, actually, the AI does all of that stuff.
Hey, let me ask you this also. This is one last question, and I'm done.
Yep.
My phone number, I get calls every now and again with a number that looks so very similar to mine, calling from like the same area. And I'm like, what is this?
Yeah, I could tell you.
And I just put them on block this caller. I don't even pick it up. Mike,
Yeah,
what the freak is that?
the advertising people and the people that's trying to scam you and all that stuff. A lot of
Hold
times
on, let
they
me ask Mike
they
cybersecurity as well.
use
Mike,
yeah
what
they
is
use the same. They'll find numbers because you can get numbers,
Yeah.
and they'll use a number in the same area code because they think you might most likely will pick up because you may think it's somebody up the street, and they're not plugged in my phone yet, you know.
Yeah.
Now, they ain't getting the old boy. I mean, they called me a couple times before. I picked up and there was something weird. Then I stopped. I started blocking everything. And then I just block all these numbers. I got this software that's that comes up, telemarketer. So anytime a telemarketer comes up, it just comes up telemarketer on my phone, and I just send those calls to the circular file. You know what I mean?
Well, a lot of the times they're pivoting off your number to make long distance calls. So what happens here is somebody from India may call your phone, because remember, in those countries, it costs money to call out.
Okay.
Right? So they still have a very draconian sort of cell phone.
But if I don't pick that number up, then they can still pivot and try to make calls off of it.
No, it's only when you answer.
It's only when you answer, right?
Because they treat your phone like it's a PBX, and so they go from one live phone number, registered phone number, and then go to the next one.
There you go. Yeah.
So that's one of the ways that they use it to rack up. That's how they can make money. You know, it's kind of like people in jail who need to call. You got to collect calls, Rikers Island. Well, it has to pass through some form of PBX system where you accept this call, right? So now they figure out a way to master that where someone in another country can actually pivot off of that phone number, and then they can actually pipe it out, and then allow that person to call long distance, and that's how they make a lot of money. But they actually do have software available that will just voice over IP that will just capture your voice. And I may pick up the phone and say, "Yo," it'll say, "Yo, Mike, getting torn out the frame up here," and it may not even be Nagone. Well, somebody captured.
Oh, that shit is the worst. That's why I'm just blocking everything. Numbers that come up, I get all this stuff going. Just with business and everything else like this, I get mad immense calls that come up. And it's just scary. You know what I mean? It's just scary. So
Yeah.
I wish I could have two different cell phones with two different numbers, but
no, that's what happens when you have an Android phone. You get two SIM cards, and you get two different lines in one phone.
Yeah, so that's the kind of game I'm gonna have to start playing, because this shit is just, it's whack. With my business and everything else like this, just a lot of crazy stuff just comes around, and I don't even answer these calls. I don't even answer them. I don't even answer them. So I think that may happen to you one time, Mike, because your number had come up and your name didn't come up, and I didn't know who it was, so I blocked it. Mm-hmm. And your number came up, so it just came up out of out of the area that you're in, and I just blocked it, and then I wasn't getting your calls. I didn't know what was going on. So then I found you had your number blocked, and then I unblocked it. And then I was like, because I'm just getting stuff from all over, man. Just oh boy, it's ill. It's ill.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. A lot of people don't realize, the sophistication of the threat actors, man. If it's possible, they'll do it, man. And so, looking, not so much as doxing people, but to actually do their reconnaissance, man. They love LinkedIn, they love Facebook. A lot of people love putting stuff on Facebook. I'm on vacation out in the DR. I won't be back for 3 weeks. Getting my passport game on. Bad guys will show up right up your house with a U-Haul truck, with the name scribbled out, saying homeboy moving company. They moved all your stuff right up out of here. Yeah,
that happened to a neighbor of ours, some years ago, and it's pretty ill. We weren't around, and they wondered, moving truck was up, and how come nobody called? We didn't know if they were moving or not. I wasn't around at the time, but my ex-wife and them, they saw a moving truck move up. They didn't know. They didn't call anybody, and somebody rolled up to the crib and started packing shit up. Mm-hmm. It was a robbery.
Yeah, but that's the state of cybersecurity. And so we talk about cloud security. how does that get managed from a next generation standpoint? There's no real way to determine whether or not Amazon, AWS, or GCP, or Azure, I should say, is actually one's going to be better than the other. They all have to comply with a lot of standards, but how are they going about it? I don't want to read this whole article because I just wanted to point out that cloud security is but I'll leave the last paragraph, and the last paragraph is, despite the efforts of the leading cloud service providers to offer optimal security, all organizations that use cloud computing and must be vigilant in doing their due diligence under the shared responsibility model. Ongoing responsibilities include carefully managing access controls, monitoring your cloud environment for security threats, conducting regular penetration tests, and thoroughly training your employees on your cloud security best practices. So that's the gamut of what's going on in the cloud from a security standpoint. Everybody has to understand that anything beyond the cloud before your provider is your responsibility. So do your due diligence.
Yeah, let me just double tap on it. That's the training part is the most important part. If your employees are not trained on how to weed out this stuff, then you'll have issues. And that's just like in the military, it's annual training. They do that's part of the annual training that every uniformed personnel has to take, and that's cyber awareness training. They cover, all the whole Facebook stuff. What you call it? Loose lips sink ships. They say all those little sayings. That you shouldn't be posting on, and same thing for the civilian world. I mean, the training is very important.
Yeah. Security awareness is what Josh is referring to. Security awareness training.
Exactly. My bad.
Yeah. You're absolutely correct about that, because it's so key on that. I think even law enforcement uses it to solve crimes, because you have people out there that are just dumb enough to even put that information on to where they can bring them to a crime scene, or who might have done a crime or whatever. So I mean, everybody's using it.
Yeah, they already have a social media task force.
Yeah. That's right, Mike. That's right.
It's a new wing of law enforcement. So there are actually police officers who their whole job is to look at social media. But I won't go in too much into that right now. This is from Forbes.com. What is a data passport? Building trust, data privacy, and security in the cloud. Data privacy is one of the most critical elements of business today, and also one of the most challenging. 60% of businesses reported they suffered a data breach caused by a vendor or third party in 2018. 60%. And according to Gemalto, more than 6 million records are lost or stolen every day. That represents a huge problem for businesses, especially in highly regulated and sensitive industries like banking. Governments around the world are starting to take notice, and new policies in Europe and elsewhere are beginning to take effect that require businesses to be more accountable for data breaches and more proactive about privacy and security. That's why several companies have introduced data passports as a way to protect data in the cloud and in transit. Data passport technology is based on a classic mainframe technology, which today can include full encryption of your data to ensure that every piece of data is encrypted. When each piece of data is encrypted, even if it's stolen, it can't be used. Data passports allow you to extend the encryption technology that you used to be only available on a physical mainframe to cloud computing. Each piece of data in the cloud has a passport assigned to it. And with the passport, you can verify if the data is misused, if the passport is still valid, etc. Sounds like blockchain to me. These data passports also give companies the ability to protect data and revoke access to it any time, a multi-cloud environment, across a multi-cloud environment. Because the data carries its passport and its encryption, with it, it will help enterprises secure their data wherever it travels. And that's the most significant development that makes data passports so unique and important. The protection and enforcement of data privacy and security are available on and off any given platform as it travels with the data. One of the biggest problems with data security is that so much of our computing these days takes place not in the physical mainframe, but in the cloud. Talked about that earlier. It used to be that data thieves might have to break into a physical space to steal hard drives or mainframes in order to steal data. Not anymore. With more and more computing of all kind taking place in the cloud, that data can become extremely vulnerable. In fact, the movement of data between parties through the cloud is its vulnerable point. And with the growing use of multi-cloud environments, the problem is only exacerbated. Imagine a single piece of information that must be transmitted from company A to company B. Company A knows that its servers are secure. The company B feels like its data is also secure, but what about the space in between? Data passports will allow the data to carry its own encryption with it, so that even if it's intercepted, it's useless. That is extremely valuable for companies and industries that transmit data in multi-cloud environments, and will be especially useful in highly regulated industries like banking and insurance. Encryption else everywhere in the in the watch world right now, for the industry experts and analysts, and data passports are the technology that will help make that happen. This technology is new, but experts believe that it will become a new standard for privacy and security in any industry that collects, uses, or transmits data, which is practically any industry in the world. This kind of encryption is available with this kind of total encryption available with a data passport should also increase consumer trust and help consumers repair any damage that may have been done to their reputations in the past through data breaches and losses. So, although they're talking about data passports, everybody's moving to the blockchain. I mean, that's pretty much what they're talking about. However, there's still a lot of trust issues with the blockchain. I'll be getting into that next week. But the thing is, a passport, everybody has to be in agreement with this standard or this sort of implementation. It's going to be hard to get some companies to sign on to something like this when they already have cloud and blockchain. If you're talking about multi-cloud environments, then what you're just talking about is creating PKI infrastructure in place, as well as data at rest, data in transit, data at landing, and data crossing one organization to another. All of that stuff happens in the cloud right now. So I'm not sure if I buy into this. So I would not put too much stock behind data passports, but it does make logical sense. I don't know if anybody else agrees or disagrees or whatever, but
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, it's I don't know, privacy concerns. That's what, pops up in my head. I mean, I know it's encrypted when the encryption is, tied to it, but everybody has to get on board for this, and not every, like you said. I mean, I'm repeating everything you said, so never mind. Everything you said was correct.
Mike might have a different opinion on the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if everyone's going to agree with that. It's hard to get everyone to agree on any one thing, but the nature of what's going on with blockchain, and there's just a lot of questions involved. I just think a lot of people are going to stick with what they feel that they know before they roll over to this. It may take a while before this gets this gets approved enterprise wide, but I can see people not being down and going against it for a myriad number of reasons. Hello?
I hear you.
Oh. Is Mike there?
He probably disappeared.
Yeah, he's on mute right now.
Mike's on mute.
Probably had to take care of something.
All right. All right. All right. Char, what's going on? Keep it techie.
What's going on, man?
Let's talk this week, man.
Okay. All right.
Talk this week coming. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just working on a few things. So we might want to wrap on a little something. Is engineering cannabis around here?
I seen him in the chat.
Yeah. I got to wrap with him as well. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. Hey, Mike, where'd you go, man? White man got his foot on your throat. What's up, man?
Yep, the white man got him.
White man got him, man. Oh, mayonnaise boys got his ass. said he's too butter leg.
Butter leg.
Mike, where you at, fam? Can you guys check to see if he fell off?
Well, nah, he's still on.
he's-
He's just muted right now. That's why I think he just stepped away for a second. He might have somebody came to the door or something.
Okay. All right.
Hey Josh, I had a question about that the video you made the other day about the encrypting the files,
Mhm.
like sending large files and stuff like that. Is there a
Mhm.
limit to the size of the files that you can send that way?
And to be honest, I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, it's set up the way it's set up. It's set up like a file share, so to speak. So, and it's pulling it directly from your computer. So it's all dependent on your bandwidth. So, and then plus, if you think about it, you going, oh, and Mike's back. I'm sorry. You going through the dark web, and the dark web is slower than a regular internet connection, and it's built for privacy because you're going through multiple connections to actually get to where you're going. So it depends on how fast that is. I mean, your connection.
What role does VPNs play in this?
VPN. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
No, I'm jumping in late because I stepped away for a second.
Yeah. No, VPNs. They're mainly, to be honest, they were built for companies. To my understanding, it was built for mainly companies. So when people work remote, they can log in using a VPN to the actual network and access the resources on the local network at work. So if there's share drives or internal SharePoint site that you can only access via the internal network, then you can connect via that VPN and it'll give you access to it. So that's what it was built for. But some people use it, outside of, a lot of people use it. I mean, it turned into a craze of protecting yourself, especially around the time that whole net neutrality, case
Yeah.
was
Yep.
out
Yep.
or whatever. People were pushing to sell VPNs, and the VPNs, so your local internet connection, your ISP can't see everything that you're doing on your computer and possibly block or slow down certain services to you. So that's, and then also the illegal people, the people that steal content or
that's really where I was
yeah.
more towards. Yeah.
All right. Let me get to this last one on the docket. This one is dockreading.com. How AI and cybersecurity will intersect in 2020. Understanding the new risk and threats posed by increased use of artificial intelligence. This is 7 pages, so keep that in mind. So much of the discussion about cybersecurity's relationship with artificial intelligence and machine learning, AI, ML, revolves around how AI, ML can improve security product functionality. However, that is actually only one dimension of a broader collision between cybersecurity and AI. As applied use of AI, ML starts to advance and spread throughout a plethora of business and technology use cases, security experts are going to need to help their colleagues in their business start to address new risks, new threat models, new domains of expertise, and yes, sometimes new security solutions. Heading into 2020, business and technology analysts expect to see solid applications of AI and ML accelerate. This means that CISOs and security professionals will need to quickly get up to speed on AI-driven enterprise risks. AI, ML, data poisoning, and sabotage. The security industry will need to keep tabs on emerging cases of attackers seeking to poison AI, ML training data in business applications to disrupt decision-making and otherwise other operations. Imagine, for example, what would happen with companies depending on AI to automate supply chain decisions. A sabotaged data set could result in drastic under or oversupply of a product. Expect to see attempts to poison the algorithm with species data in data samples specifically designed to throw off the learning process of machine learning algorithm. It's not just about dumping smart technology, but making it so that the algorithm appears to work fine. While producing the wrong results. So this is actually true. This is very true. So your AI is going to need some form of key or some form of authentication method. And so that the AI can't be hijacked by a bad guy. You have AI hijacking. And the AI has to be treated just like a human. That means that the AI needs to be able to authenticate itself and log out on its own, log back in. And actually, you need to monitor the AI now because the AI is performing a critical function where it may generate or query certain records and certain decisions and then push that out. So you can end up having, something like Amazon's machine learning or AI in the workplace, not in the workplace, in their manufacturing facilities actually become compromised and start sending out multiple books and things, multiple orders to the same person or to a bad guy for that matter. It may compromise somebody's account, it compromise the data set, and then send off a whole bunch of items to a potential threat actor, and then that threat actor then goes back on eBay and sells it or sells it on Craigslist or something like that. It makes a profit off of that. So those are ways that AI could be poisoned.
But hey, Mike.
Yes, sir.
But in terms of the machine learning and cybersecurity, it's going to be an ongoing process because the more data it gets, the more it learns. So the more it learns, the more it adapts. So the equation, the algorithm for cybersecurity, like, okay, the detection. So writing an algorithm, machine learning algorithm to detect certain viruses or certain spams or certain things. And even though it might be flawed, but with more data, it basically learns and becomes more effective. So it's like a cycle, a cyclic movement where even though there will be flaws with it, but with more data being fed to it, it becomes more and more effective.
Yeah, security is always an ongoing process.
Yeah, so it's going to be always a cyclic movement. So even though it's going to always learn, the algorithm is always going to be basically being more effective with more data is being fed. So if you feed, even though you might be able to defeat it, but it learns from it. And it basically gets better and better. And basically then now it knows how to detect the viruses and all that before it even comes into your system.
Yep.
Somebody else. Definitely right, bro. No, I was just gonna say it's similar to how they're constantly feeding the algorithm all these photos of people's faces in order so they can train the AI to actually do the facial recognition crap, where they could I don't know, one of those movies. I mean, I always think about those movies. Like it was a TV show I used to watch where, they could see the algorithm or the AI can actually, know who that person is. You don't need an ID or anything. It just knows who you are.
Yeah.
Only thing I'm saying is if you train this AI to be a bad guy, you got a problem.
Well, that's what the cyber gangs are doing, is they're training bots, right? We talk about bots, these sort of lines of code that act like a human to spoof you, like Mike Shinnery was talking about earlier. And so they're capable of doing things like that. A bot attack, which is what they claim the Russians did during the 2016 campaign. And we know that was never true, based on Comey's testimony. That was never true. So,
well, I've been watching Frontline a little bit, been going over the Putin files. I don't know if you guys have taken a look at that. You need to look at that. And you've got some pretty credible Russian people, operatives, Apparatchiks and others who stepped up and have talked openly about this. And there was some real issues with that. And they did have a lot of that going on. And the reason why they said that was because of the issues that, the Rose Revolution and all this kind of stuff like that was going on, the Orange Revolution, all these different things that were going on inside of Russia. They felt we were sponsoring. They decided to get involved in our elections to kind of mess it up as well and go against Hillary. And they were exceedingly sophisticated about how they got involved. So I think there was a lot of truth to that. They're those who are starting to back some of this up.
FBI says otherwise, though, right? So
well, I don't believe him. I believe Comey's a liar. But anyway,
I'm not saying Comey is telling the truth. I'm saying the FBI's testimony says otherwise, right? There's no real way. If the highest agency of threat investigation says that that's not true, I can't accept anything other than their own testimony, because no one else.
I understand what you're saying, but understand a lot of that is political. There's
Right.
a lot of politics behind that. But anyway, okay, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
Right, but in cybersecurity, I can't say the Russians did this without actually confirming it, right? Unless we see one of the ways that we determined that if it was a threat, an adversary from an attack from an adversary, is because of the alphabet, and Chinese alphabet, Russian alphabet, Arabic, things like that. They have longer characters. The American alphabet or Western alphabet only has 26 characters. Russian alphabet has 32. Chinese has multiple. Right.
Yeah.
So they leave those characters behind when they enter computer systems, and you can see it in the logs. And so that will determine that. But there was no real way to determine that it was the actual Russians who did anything. They just said it was the Russians, right? But in reality, Snowden says otherwise. Snowden says otherwise, and he's more closer to that part of the game than, let's say, some of these people that they may interview. So sometimes they will point the finger for political reasons, but then that throws people like us off because we spend our time chasing ghosts that don't really exist. And what has happened with threat intelligence, CIA, they have the ability to, like Mike Shinnery was talking about earlier, spoof the idea that it's actually Russians doing this and it's really them doing it. And so in order to cause chaos. And so they can blame it on them because there's no real way. I mean, they put the onus back on the nation state and say, hey, well, these guys attacked us. But in reality, we haven't confirmed this. We have never confirmed this from a cybersecurity standpoint.
Well, those who are saying that we did. So that's why I'm saying there's so much crosstalk. And Mike, I'm going to go with what you're saying, because just for the purposes of what we're talking about here right now, I'm going to go with that. But as I've because I like to look at stuff, and as I've been just doing my own little just inquiries, and Frontline may have their spin, and others may have their spin. And I've looked at a lot of different mediums coming through. It seems as though that this that this is it's possible. So I'll just leave it at that. I don't know, but to get involved and to play this type of game and mess with our systems and our elections as well, from a cyber security perspective, seems very possible. Very possible.
Yeah, but bots are not illegal, right? Bots are just lines of code, right? They're just code that has specific algorithms to them. There's nothing illegal about it. And there's nothing illegal about actually using bots to spam commercials and anything like that. They do that all the time. But if they're talking about doing it from an election season, then what they're talking about is voter suppression. But white Americans have always done voter suppression long before lines of code even came out, and they've never been held accountable for anything. And so when we talk about Russian sophistication in terms of cybersecurity, it's not just Russia that has, I mean, any country that's in the G20 has high levels of sophistication of cyber attacks. You know, it's not just, you know, Russia. Philippines are very strong now in 2020 in terms of cybersecurity. Iran is very strong now. Turkey is strong. China has always been strong. Japan is strong. India is very strong at this. Brazil is now strong in cybersecurity.
Well, Mike,
Yeah.
this is a form of asymmetrical warfare. This is asymmetric all day.
Right,
And
right. But
a lot of countries engage in it, and Russia, that's one of their strengths.
It's one of their strengths, but it's easy to point the finger at them. And what happens to people like us, we're on the lookout for those guys in Moscow, but it's really these guys down in Virginia that's actually causing a lot of chaos. And you know, we spend too much time going through alerts and digging through logs, and it's very tedious, man. And I think they politicize the cybersecurity landscape for their own selfishness, and it's disappointing because then it creates chaos. So we start racializing cybersecurity, and we start saying the Chinese, the Russians, you know, the Iranians.
I think the Russians have a certain reason, and I wouldn't call it racialized. I would say it's more political and in some respects economic. And I think others do. You know, I just think that's a real part of the world. We could racialize it to castigate folks, but we without question do it as well. So it's not like our hands are clean, because they are certainly not.
Yeah, but when you racialize things, then what happens in the workplace, right? When you have diversity, right? We have a very strong contingent of actually Chinese nationals working in our
yeah, we do
in big tech firms. Well, what happens?
And Russians as well.
Well, what happens when you start accusing a nation, an ethnicity of doing something malicious? That becomes a problem. And so when we say racializing cybersecurity, now you're kind of creating a soft racism that makes it acceptable to say it was these guys, it was that guy, it was these people, it was that people, and we really haven't confirmed it. And so when
I certainly think it can yield to that, and I think that can be unfair. But I'm also going to say this and just leave it at that. That also does not mean that it's not absolutely true. That there may be some truth to it. There may be. Not to say that you want to racialize it, but there may be some truth to some of what's being said.
Right. But I mean, for us, you notice I use the term threat actor, right, or an adversary, but I never really say it's Russia, it's China, it's Iran, it's anybody else, because we have to be very specific in our dissertations and stuff like that, that we don't actually inadvertently stop pointing fingers at people, because now you start having McCarthyism in cybersecurity. No one's really going to believe you, because if you're wrong in cybersecurity, you get it wrong. The bad guys only need to get it right once. You can keep, effing up, but the bad guys only need to get it right once, and then next thing you know, we're missing out, and we're days and if not weeks, if not months, if not years behind the investigation because we pointed at the wrong people.
Yeah, think about it this way, Nagon.
That's always a factor. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, think about it this way, Nagon. I can connect to a VPN. I can connect to the dark web, and I'll bounce off of 3 servers in one server in China, one server in Poland, one server in somewhere else in Europe. And I mean, it looks like it's Russia, and it looks like it's coming from there, but it's actually not. So it's very hard to trace down where these people are actually attacking from.
Exactly. Oh yeah. Listen, I certainly understand that, but I also understand, politics, and let's just say, we do things to other countries to disrupt, and they do things to us to disrupt. That's just part of the game. That's just how it is. So what I'm saying is, it's there may be some actual reality to some of this. Not that I believe all of it, but do I believe that Putin and these guys sitting over there are not utilizing others to get involved in some of our activities here? There's no question about it. They would do it. And if I was over there as well, I hate to say it, but I probably would be doing that as well. So I do know that is just a part of the game. So I would say I can dismiss some, but I wouldn't dismiss all of it. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, nation state actors, it's not even just about nation state actors anymore. Now you have cartels. You have the Aryan Brotherhood who's involved in cyber espionage and stuff like that now, and doxing people and looking at sheriffs and deputies and stuff like that and getting them popped and whatnot. They're involved in that type of stuff now. You have
sure.
Some of these
gangs been involved in that for a while. They've been involved in that for a while.
You have a lot of Muslim groups in the Middle East and Africa involved in cybersecurity now. I mean, they're not out there beheading people, but they're actually very sophisticated in computer science and computer engineering. So, we can't just automatically say it's these guys or it's these guys, because Chechnya does have a large contingent of Muslims who have access to a small amount of resources, such as a laptop and a few VPN connections, like Josh was mentioning.
The Chechens, for sure.
And even NATO states. We see a lot of attempts coming out of Romania, Bulgaria, a lot of your Baltic states, and it's not even just Russia. So it's a lot of APTs happening out there, advanced persistent threats coming out of these regions that's outside of Russia and outside of China. And that as time goes by, a lot of these groups are becoming way too complex with their threat attempts against organizations in the United States and whatnot, because they need to make money. It's a lot of money involved in getting healthcare records and whatnot, and then selling it on the dark web 2 or 3 times. Man, you can make a few $1 million doing that stuff.
It's also used as a threat, because I know the gangs MS-13, the Aryan Brotherhood and others have come up with police records so they can literally threaten police officers, so they can find out who they are and say, listen, if you move here or whatsoever, you gonna die. Nobody's gonna know how you went down, but this is what's going on. They got this shit going on like crazy. And so, like I said, MS-13, and that's a Spanish, a Latin group of gangsters that seems like they've got tentacles damn near all throughout South America, close to it, and certainly in the United States. Dangerous crew, as well as the ABB and all that. Yeah, you're definitely right, Mike. I mean, there's no doubt about that. You're dead on it. But which makes this actually pretty scary. So you can see why cyber warfare is an effective tool. It's effective.
Well, because there's no governance there, right?
Yeah.
There's no governance in cyberspace, so it's wild west out there. So if your data is out there, if your systems are out there publicly facing, you are at risk, and you will get torn out the frame. Like the article said, 6 million records a day are lost.
Yep.
Hey,
What was this brief little travel ban?
Yeah, the White House came out with a travel ban to several African countries, and I said, Preem is on that list as well. So,
hey, can I respond?
Hey, go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead.
I want to respond. There was a question from, I think it was Mike M in the chat.
Yeah.
He was asking something about Nigeria. I just wanted to say that, yeah, it doesn't seem like there's a threat, but like you guys were saying, all these countries that are now involved in this cybersecurity, when we get warnings from Microsoft, they tell us what internet service providers the people are using when they try to log in to our employees' accounts, and we're getting them out of a few countries, including Nigeria and Africa. We're getting a lot of Indonesia, some Syria, some Saudi Arabia, some Peru. There's a lot of countries that you would think have nothing to do with being a threat to America, but I mean, information is vital. You know, people making the fake passports, just using somebody else's name and information, getting credit cards, moving money, stuff like that. I mean, it doesn't have to be a threat to the country as in terms of war, but just the information that they can get is, you know, that can be used for all kinds of purposes. It's not always strictly, you know, just the politics and stuff.
Yeah, man, I can see that. I can see that. This is deep. This stuff is deep, man. Like I said, the AI. You start weaponizing AI. This is a real freaking problem. This is a problem.
Yeah. So the next next page says deep fake audio takes Becky attacks into a new arena. So business email compromise. This is definitely an area that I spend a lot of my time in the day going over. But we talked about this earlier. You know, spicing up, you know, someone's voice, someone like Nagone, hear them on a live stream or something like that, and they said, you know, I get a call, and it goes from it says it's Nagone, but in reality it says, you know, yo, Mike, niggas getting torn out the frame. It's just his voice. In reality, it's not even him, man. Somebody on the other side, man, you know, playing with a cat like Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget, man.
That's very possible. Wow, scary.
Yeah, they do that. So that's what they do now.
Like I said, my mom got a call saying it was a grandson, and that was nowhere near the case. And she said it was him. Very scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think that the African travel ban that the White House has implemented has anything to do with cybersecurity. It's just more of being anti-Muslim. So a lot of those countries are not playing well with the U.S. anyways. They have very strong relationships with China and Russia and other in Iran and, you know, other countries and whatnot. And
did Trump call Nigeria a shithole country as well?
I think he called the continent a shithole country, even though the continent is not a country.
Yeah, well, he's well, anyway, I don't know, but the fucking ignorant bastard. But I didn't know if okay, so Nigeria, I guess, is a part of a shithole country. Okay, all right.
Yeah. AI-powered malware evasion. Deepfakes are going to be just one way that the bad guys will leverage AI to perpetrate attacks. Security researchers are on the tenterhooks waiting to discover AI-powered malware evasion techniques. Some believe 2020 will be the year they discover the first malware using AI models to evade sandboxes. Instead of using rules to determine whether the features and processes indicate the sample is in a sandbox, malware authors will instead use AI, effectively creating malware that can more accurately analyze its environment to determine if it is running in a sandbox, making it more effective at evasion. Yeah, that's very true. And so for those of you who don't understand, malware at its base point is it only has one specific task, and that's to exploit a system maliciously. But you know, leveraging that malware with an AI sort of program would allow that malware to skip around your antivirus protection. Your antivirus protection would be useless against it. And so the way how we're seeing this is that something as simple as you know, Dropbox can be used, you know, with some kind of video in there embedded with malware. As a matter of fact, just speaking about that, Jeff Bezos' phone was exploited with malware through WhatsApp by allegedly the monarchy or the prince himself, MBS. That's what they're saying. That's the rumor. So is it capable? Is it possible it can happen? Yeah, it's already happening. So, and nation states pay a hefty amount of money for that type of stuff. They'll pay millions of bucks for something like this. If it's effective and it can be used to attack an adversary or a person of interest, POI, high value target, HVT, high value asset, HVA, they will go after these people. And they are very persistent about it. Why Jeff Bezos is talking to the Prince of Saudi Arabia, I have no effing clue. No clue. What do you know? What is this guy? What are they talking about, anyways?
I know one thing. They both have a lot of money.
Yeah, but talk to my secretary, man. I'm not talking to you directly, right?
They could be talking about Dom games.
Mm-hmm. It's a kind of different Dom game that they're running, man. Big bank taking little bank, man. Jeff Bezos is one of the probably the top 5 richest guys in the world. So I would say that they might be looking for a handout.
He's got a lot of frog skins, bro.
Yeah.
He's big. So, and we talking about Dom games. We talking about the economic Dom games. So that's kind of what I'm.
All right, biometrics cat and mouse game. Expect to see a game of cat and mouse played in the fraud prevention world of financial services when it comes to the use of AI and biometric technology to onboard and authenticate customers. Financial institutions are rapidly iterating on authentication mechanisms that use facial recognition and AI to scan, analyze, and confirm online identity using mobile cameras and on-file government-issued IDs. But the bad guys will be forcing them to stay on their toes as they use AI to create deep fakes that try to dupe these systems. Yeah, so it's actually a good point. All these selfies that you see a lot of people use on Facebook and Instagram and whatnot, that stuff becomes public record. Because, well, not public, but it's no longer in your, it's no longer yours. It belongs to Facebook now, but that stuff can be Googled. And so what's to say that they don't print out an image, they take your image, download it, print it out on a very high quality printer and use that to unblock your phone through Face ID unlock. Now they have access to your system. Same thing with biometrics of your fingerprint. They will capture that image, something as simple as Scotch tape in some compressed air. Now they can lift that fingerprint off and reapply it to your phone when you're away or whatever it is, and that's, you know, they got you. They
have to have access to your phone, though. Am I correct?
Yeah, you drop your phone, but all they have to do is lift the fingerprint that was left on it.
Okay.
Right. Most people only use their thumb to unlock their phone, not exactly their middle finger or anything like that. So you have a glass cup for wine drinking or wine sipping or something like that. They've been known, the Mossad has been known to capture people's fingerprints off of there and use that to get into their devices.
Yeah, those Mossad, those some real greasy, slick bastards. Those dudes, they leave no stone unturned.
Yeah. So, you know, biometrics is although it seems cool, man, you can be got out here. So, and there are ways of capturing that fingerprint off of your phone or off of your laptop if the bad guys want it remotely. They'll scan it. They'll wait for you to scan back into your device. They'll capture that image through one of their scripts. Their scripts will just capture that and then ship it right back to them. And they'll use that the next time they need to log in because they already have that fingerprint.
Well, you know, maybe they should be other prints that people should actually be able to be used.
Mm-hmm.
Other prints that wouldn't be that easy to capture, like a toe print or something like that.
Oh.
I think what we're getting to now is the fact that it's the data. The data is stored somewhere no matter what. So, you know, Verizon and all they capture information from the phones. Google's capturing information from the phones. So all these databases have a copy of that print or whatever data came off of those phones stored somewhere else in a warehouse somewhere. So it's only a matter of trying to get into the right database before that information is captured.
Didn't the NSA hack Google? Weren't they able to come in there and hack Google themselves? I mean,
I thought the NSA was Google.
Yeah, they actually
boom,
have
boom.
they actually have an agreement with a lot of these companies that people post information on, like Google, for instance, Yahoo. I know at one point, and a lot of the email services. It started with all that, because people, that was the way people sent email. But now they're in Facebook. I'm pretty sure. That's why that last and they kind of hinted at it, but that's actually how it is. But in that movie, that last Jason Bourne movie,
Yeah,
where
yeah. That's right.
yeah,
They
it was like Deep
had the
Dream or
Zuckerberg
some
character.
fake company, Deep
Yeah,
Dream.
yeah,
Yeah, they
yeah.
got agreements like that. A lot of that stuff is real. It may not be exactly the way it is, but they're and then also they're tapped in. Man, let me stop talking about this. But well, yeah, they're tapped in like at the ISP level. When we're talking about the backbone, because what they're supposed to be doing is protecting Americans, and so interaction from outside the country coming in is what they're supposed to be looking at. But I mean, you just watch the whole Snowden movie and all the releases and all that stuff.
Yep,
Read
yep,
about
yep,
all that stuff, and
yep.
you'll understand what
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
doing.
No. I've watched all the Snowden stuff, and
No, well, they used to. This is during the Obama administration when they were capturing at the ISP level all of these, all of this data, and so they didn't have a warrant to actually do that, right? The Fourth Amendment is what protects our privacy from government intrusion, and so they're supposed to uphold that amendment. And unfortunately, they breached it multiple times. And so what they had to do, the Supreme Court overturned it, and what they had to do was have the ISPs capture the metadata and then ship it to NSA and FBI. And so that's the way they got around it, is that the ISPs and the social media service providers like Facebook and whatnot, that's what they have been doing to circumvent the privacy law, the Fourth Amendment and whatnot, and the First Amendment. And so that's how they got around it. But now with the Patriot Act and whatnot, they're just going in and go get your data if they want it.
yeah, I think that Patriot Act needs to be cut back to the fat meat. I think all the stuff needs to be cut back to the fat, man. I think this shit is just crazy because they're not using it. I know that they're grabbing some suckalades who are out here, trying to do stuff against the government. I do understand that some of this goes on. I do understand that, but most of this stuff is used to really to really control us. See what we're doing. Kind of scary.
All right. Differential privacy gains stream to protect analytics data. The combination of big data, AI, and strict privacy regulations is going to cause enterprise headaches until security and privacy professionals start innovating better ways to shield the kind of customer analytics that fuel a lot of AI applications today. The good news is that other forms of AI can be used to accomplish this. In the coming year, we will see practical applications of AI algorithms, including differential privacy, a system in which a description of patterns in a data set is shared while withholding information about individuals, says Rajarshi Gupta, head of artificial intelligence at Avast. Gupta says differential privacy will allow companies to profit from big data insights as we do today, but without exposing all the private details of customers and other individuals. The way how you really do this is that you separate the sensitive information from the necessary information. You don't need to know an African American, made a purchase on Amazon or at the liquor store. You just need to know that there was a purchase at a liquor store in this area. That's all you need to know. You don't need to know the ethnicity and the first name and the last name and this and that, or the sensitive information of the individual. So there needs to be mechanisms in place that strips, if not mask, a lot of that sensitive information away from all the other activity. All right. Hard lessons about AI ethics and fairness. And so this is what we've been talking about earlier. There are some hard lessons ahead with AI and ethics, fairness, and consequences. These issues are relevant to security leaders who are tasked with maintaining the integrity and availability of systems that rely on AI to operate. We are going to get a lot of new lessons from the usage of AI in cybersecurity this coming year. The recent story about Apple Card offering different credit limits for men and women has pointed out that we don't readily understand how these algorithms work, says Todd Inskip, principal of cybersecurity strategy for Booz Allen Hamilton and RSA Conference Advisory Board member. We are going to find some hard lessons in situations where an AI appeared to be doing one thing and we eventually figure out the AI was doing something else or possibly nothing at all. And so, yeah, the ethics part, which is what I was referring to earlier about, my spirited debate with Nagone 11, that ethics is really important for us. And so we can't just say, we can't genderize things, we can't racialize things because we don't really know. And we're not supposed to know anyways. I'm not supposed to know whether or not the Chinese are, whether or not the ethnicity of a person is Chinese or Korean or something like that. There's no way to know about that because we haven't really looked into it, right? We don't know who's behind the keyboard. All we know is that somebody breached us or somebody attacked us, and that's the extent of it. It's not our job to actually politicize and create a toxic report on someone based on their ethnicity and things of that nature of these other pieces of information.
I would agree. I would agree, but I do know that there's very little ethics going on out here, and people are going to move on certain kinds of things that are going to happen out here. But overall, in a more than equal world, I would certainly agree.
Yeah, because today it might be Russia and China. Tomorrow it could very well be all of Africa. They could be saying, well, it's the Nigerians attacking us, it's the Kenyans attacking us, it's the Ugandans, it's the Ethiopians, man. So that can get really, really tricky because you put in, you put somebody like a Gisa or Preem or somebody like that in the lineup. You really can't tell who's who and where, and who's from where and what.
I agree. It could be, may not to be a lot of things, but I do go along the lines that there are certain countries that we have some issues with because we do have sanctions against some countries, and they might have some interests to mess with us a little bit as we have interest to mess with them. So, I'm just looking at things kind of realistically, as opposed. But yeah, it could yield easily to being discriminatory and creating certain kind of issues. I agree with that. I wouldn't disagree with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to go over any certifications because I don't think that's really necessary. I think the idea was to bring, to have a conversation about cloud and cybersecurity, AI, and computer science. I think that that's very interesting. That computer science is really teaching a very archaic view of software development that we typically don't use at the moment. So had they, just to recap, had they taught software development or computer science at, the grade school level, K through 12, then you would have better, better results from a human resource standpoint. All your human capital would be pretty strong. But yeah, I saw some questions in the chat. I don't know. Let me see. see a lot of people coming in here looking to get into cybersecurity and cloud computing and system administration.
Hey, what's up, fellas? I just wanted to jump in real quick and ask a quick question. It's kind of on the economic side, but it does bleed into tech as well.
Yes, sir.
Yesterday, I was listening to Dr. Boyce Watkins, right? And he said something real interesting, right? In his live chat, somebody asked him the question, do you ever think that there'll be a new Black Wall Street, right? And his response to that is it's already happening online, you know. And I was just curious to your opinion on that, you know, with the advancement of things like blockchain and IoT. Do you buy into that at all?
Yeah, I think that the emergence of Black banks now, the emergence of entrepreneurs through social media, I think we have to look at Black Wall Street from a different perspective rather than what it was in the 1920s and the late 1800s. You can go through the manosphere right now and you can see, you know, one content creator has close to 1 million subscribers. That's 1 million customers. And so they have a base. And so they're generating revenue through a form of digital infrastructure called social media, as well as wireless communications and smartphones and tablets and stuff like that. We have to look at what is the new oil. What is the data is the new oil. And so are we generating data? Are we generating meaningful data? And so I think as things start to maturate, with these fourth industrial revolution, you're talking 5G, we're talking IoT, we're talking cloud computing and smartphones and so on and so forth, smartwatches and other devices and whatnot. We have all the necessary components to actually recreate something outside of legacy infrastructure, not on the ground, but in the cloud. And cyberspace is the new real estate. So how much have we consumed? How much do we own in this area, right? So can we create a Black Wall Street in cyberspace? Yeah, sure we can. Sure. Cryptocurrencies, blockchain, a lot of that stuff, AI, we just got finished talking about AI and machine learning. I think there's a perfect opportunity to do something like that. The pale-faced boys, they got Silicon Valley. That's fine. But how do we transition? How do we get into, how do we leapfrog ahead of them so that we're capturing some space for ourselves?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you got the continent has 1 billion people in it. How do we tie in ourselves with those sort of economies? How do we create a Black Wall Street that's transatlantic?
And we have to be thinking that way because, there's a lot of room for commerce and trade on many different levels. And certainly, currencies and everything else like that will play a big role. And that's huge. 1 billion folks, that's a huge market to market to as well.
Yeah, tap into that. We got to tap into that. Before Black Wall Street in Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and these other places, you had maybe a few thousand people and whatnot that was really the money bounced, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. What's the number on that call?
I think the number was something like it's something like 50 times around in that community before it left. It was one of the wealthiest towns in the state. And that's one of the wealthiest towns in the state.
Oh, there you go. And that can actually be done. We can recreate something like that, but if we're using the manosphere as a barometer, man, people fighting with each other, but you can't have a Black Wall Street or anywhere if everybody's popping shots at each other, putting hot ones in people.
Talking about hot ones and calling everybody all kind of names and folks are being threatened.
It's not productive, fam. It's not productive.
It's a hodgepodge of madness, and I think it's there is a certain level of I hate to say it, but in our community, and I'm looking at it because I'm doing myself and 2 other brothers. I'm not going to mention who, but we're looking at the how would I say a look back 55 years later from the Monahan report, and there's a lot going on. It's my contention as I look at things. We do have a certain amount of mental dysfunction that we have to literally deal with, and that's an issue. We're going to have to talk about some of that, because that affects us in business and a lot of the kind of things that we've got going on. But we're going to have to look at that. There's a reason for why this has come about, and I have pinpointed it. But we'll go into this deeper. But we've got issues, and it plays out very strong here on YouTube. So this is a great little lab that we see, but it plays out very strong here in the Black sector. It plays out very strong, unfortunately, but it does.
Yeah, I mean, we should have a cybersecurity, cloud computing, ADOS group or something like that, or whatever hashtag they want to use today for 2020, because it seems to change every year. There should be some kind of a council or something like that looks at that, like a chamber of technologies instead of a chamber of commerce. A Black chamber of technologies or something like that. Or industrialization, fourth industrialization. You need something like that. There's no organization, Tony, and that's part of the problem now. Everybody's doing something, but everybody's doing it on a rugged individual level, and so it's hard for you to actually recreate that sort of magic that was done back then, because they did it out of necessity. But they were industrializing back then. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to industrialize now.
Yeah, I think that's huge what you're saying too, in terms of the organization aspect of it, because just me with the stuff that I do on my channel and everything like that, my mind is starting to shift on it. And what I mean is that I was always thinking to myself, like, I want to develop my own streaming service and whatever, things of that nature. But the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of brothers and sisters that kind of already have these things laid out. It's just that we're all on our rugged individual stuff, as opposed to, let's just say somebody like myself. I wanted to develop my own streaming service, but I already see there's some people that got something going on. Just go link up with them. You know what I mean? Just link up with them.
Well,
just try to do it on your own, like just show love and link up and let's build together, and just let that go on your end. Like on my end, I want a streaming service. I'll let that go. I'd rather just link up with somebody that's already got something going. I can help shift some of my audience over there, and let's build.
I definitely agree with you, bro. And,
but we've been programmed to a certain degree not to do that. There's a programming involved,
and that's what I was gonna say.
And many of us have, just like how you program any other computer system or whatever, there is code that has been written in that is a part of your operating system that is accepted to have you operate a certain type of way. And that goes back a while, and we can get in. We're going to have a hangout on this later on. I'll say, but it's going to be in depth. And we've been programmed, and you see that programming here savagely. And it's terrifying, because this is what leads to a lot of the murders and a lot of things that we have going on. But yet we see that programming is very heavy, and it's across the board, but it's been programmed to certain subgroups in our community very strong, so we don't operate at a certain level. And that is something we are going to have to address. And it will be painful, but we are going to have to address that. And many of us don't want to. And that's part of our problem.
Yeah, it's that boss mentality, so to speak. Everybody's trying to be a boss or whatever. And that's why I really like this platform. What Mike V and the guys created or whatever, because everybody brings something to the table. You know what I'm saying? We all work together and and share our experiences and just put something together, for young Black folks to take away from, you know what I'm saying? And it ain't like no one, owner of it or whatever. It's a co-op, like they say, you know what I'm saying? Everybody brings something to the table. So that's all I wanted to say. Add to it. But you're right, Nagon.
Yeah, and somebody said it's to the media's programming. It's actually beyond the media. It's beyond the media. It's been programmed into us from a very early time, and we've never fully addressed it. And it's deep. We haven't addressed some of these issues. We're going to have to, and that's part of the problem that you see with some of the various movements that people have, and some of the other stuff that people are talking about that we just haven't addressed. And I've looked at this very, very, very closely, and I don't know if we can get past it as a full group. I don't know if we can. I know certain groups of us will be able to do that, and it's getting to a point where I'm thinking this is going to be more of a group thing than an overall enterprise-wide piece. And I've seen certain cultures and societies have to deal with this and how they dealt with it. They dealt with this in some savagely draconian ways. I certainly don't want to see that go down here. But it is it's like my father used to always say. He used to use a rather tough term, but he called this is going to be a tough titty to suck. But this is kind of where we are at with some of this, and we'll get into some details on this later. But this is tough. Programming is beyond the media. The media's only been gassed to the flame, but this is beyond that. It's deep.
No, that's that's saying a lot, man. I understand where Tony's coming from, man. Boyce Watkins does have a lot of grand ideas, mostly because he's speaking from the financial standpoint. But we just covered an article last night about Black people, Gary, Indiana, only having a average net income of $16,000, and people getting moved out of Chicago and these other Black places. That stuff needs to be discussed, about the impact of that. If your income per capita keeps going out of the community, even at that level, and not into something like a Black bank, I think like Black people only put $4 of I don't know what the number is. Maybe
It's black people, for every $10,000 we put into the banking system, only $4 goes to a Black bank. I mentioned that to one of my friends just recently. He said, "Well, the Black banks are corrupt." First thing that came out of his mouth, and I sat back and looked at him and said, "Oh, Medeus, my God, here it is." And this is supposed to be one of these, Black man, Black woman, Black this, Black, this, Black, blackity, black, the blackity, black. First thing he said. And I looked at him and said, wow, this is deep. So the programming is heavy. Why do we not invest in ourselves and put our money in ourselves? This thing is heavy. This thing is heavy. And it's not so much the media. The media's helped, but it goes deeper than that, and we have to address some of this stuff. But we could go a long ways in solving a lot of our issues, not all, but a lot of our issues, with literally investing in ourselves. We could go a long way there, and we are in a perfect position right now in which to do so. And folks are at each other's throats over the dumbest shit you can imagine. You have to ask yourself, why? Why is that?
like I said,
it's crazy too. I was actually, going to your point, what you're talking about, thinking Black and all that, and how much we need to do it. This is more or less just kind of a random thought or statement. I don't know if anybody can take off with it or whatever, but I just so happened this morning, I was just going over a few things, just mentally thinking about stuff in terms of Black community and stuff, yada, yada, yada. And out here in LA, there's this bank, it's called East West Bank, and it's a Chinese bank. There's about 10 of them out here, and I just wanted to look into them a little bit. And I saw that I think their total assets was somewhere around like 44.1 billion, and then I looked into One United. I think there's only like 2 One United banks out here in LA, which is a Black bank. And their total assets was like 661 million. And it was just kind of like a depressing thing when I saw. I was like, damn, like we're not even competing out here. You know what I'm saying? Like when you see something like that, try to compare. But this is also given the fact that East West Bank, it's a Chinese bank. They're being backed by like literally the country. You know what I mean? So go ahead.
You hit it right in the head. The Chinese banks that come here and open up are backed up by the banks of China.
Exactly.
They're backing them up. I mean, that you have huge assets backing a lot of these banks up, and $660 million. It's nothing. That's nothing for a bank to have. That's nothing. That's nothing. Here we are in America today. The Black community basically is estimated overall net worth is over 1.5 billion. trillion dollars. All right. That's about what our overall worth is, which is still small, but still, that is, if we took 10% of that, 10% of what your overall net worth is and put it into a Black bank, you could change a lot of shit. You could change a lot of shit. 100 billion, $200 billion can go a long way. People don't understand what that means. That can go a long way in doing things and helping you make moves. It can help your community out immensely. To do quite a bit, to really invest in very legitimate businesses that we're self-financing, which you don't have to self-finance. If you've got a very good idea and you get the capital, and then you start employing your own people, you start producing product, and then you start bringing income, and then you bring more money in. It's the multiplier effect comes into play. That's what banks lean on, multiplier effect, and that's the game out here. I talk to my Black banker all the time. We talk about this. It's very serious shit. We can solve some of these issues ourselves. Some of them we need governmental support, like everybody else has gone out here and got governmental support and gets projects bid, everything backed up, and their communities run heavy. The white community runs so heavy off of government dollars, you wouldn't believe it. But we don't get that. But we could go a long way in financing ourselves through backing up our own banking institutions. We don't run that down. We don't do it, but yet we'll sit here and we'll call each other nigga and this kind of thing, and walk around and talk about, well, I got my money this, you got your 100,000 here, you got talking crazy when we're not even investing in us. We're talking crazy. It's schizoid, schizophrenic. It's a sickness, and we have to sit down and we got to come to grips with some of this. We have to, if we're going to go, we have to deal with some of this, and that's the point that a lot of us don't want to deal with. That's the point. I'm done with this as of right now, until we get into this thing later on and really sort of break this down. But this is where we're at. We could solve a lot. We can begin to solve some of our problems. Not all of them, but we can begin to solve some of them through this. It's not just money, because in order to invest and do this, it takes a certain mindset to get there. So it's more than just money. It's working together, and there's a spiritual aspect to this as well. I don't want to take that out of the picture, but that's a big part of our problem. Anyway.
I'd like to introduce a thought, and this is something I've always thought of it this way. It's just you have to find the right people to make it actually happen. And I believe the Black Brain Trust is a great place to start, because you guys have the concepts and the technology behind you to get it started. But if you think back to like the AOL days, right? What's keeping Black America from starting their own server or website, starting something that can build just from the community doing it? Meaning we get some people to start it, even if it's only 50 people, like you said, right here on YouTube, the Black sector of YouTube. You get 50 of the biggest content creators or whatever to invest, put in a little bit, create some ability of some storage. Everybody can buy 10 terabytes of storage, and that's what it's gonna cost, $200 a piece or something, if that. And start building servers and stuff, and building our own, I don't want to say the wrong words, but an AOL type service that would then we could go out and advertise that using what we've already got built right here on YouTube, and across all the social media. If we start spreading the word that, hey, there's this this new thing, it's for Black Americans, right? And as people come in, we could make it into a membership of $5 a month. And if we could get 1 million people even to join, now you have a business that's making $5 million a month. There's your banking right there. That's just with
you have to comply. That sounds good, but you have to comply with all types of financial regulations. You can't actually move money around like that. But there's something, to your point, there was something called Black Planet back in the day that then became Facebook. You know, that Mark Zuckerberg and a couple of these other guys ripped off the code from Black Planet to create MySpace, not MySpace, Facebook. So what I'm saying here is that's been tried in the past, but we have to look at things from a global perspective, right? Everything is global now. Back then, things weren't as global because you weren't as interconnected as you are now, because there were so many gaps in communication, access to utilities like high-speed internet. Now everybody in the United States has high-speed internet. So now we have to look at this from a global landscape. You have 85 to 100 million melanated people outside of the United States in Latin America, twice as many as in the United States. And you have a continent that has 1 billion people on it. And I just saw a documentary the other day. There's a lot of what they call African Indians in the subcontinent of India, in certain sections.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is to get something started, as far as getting the Black community together to start something, so that we're not so dependent on the money coming from a an American government backed banking system or something like that. If we can create our own income through services that we render for ourselves, which is what Black Wall Street essentially did. It was a bunch of farmers and different laborers and workers that put their money together to build their own thing without the need for help from the outside communities.
It sounds to me like you're talking about like digital agriculture, basically planting, using the technology as a way to farm.
Right, a place to start and bringing the people together to actually build something that serves them, and that way, because think about it like this: if we start off with like just Black YouTube, right, the Black sector of YouTube, we're probably, what you said, somebody's got 1 million subscribers, right? So I'm just saying, if we were to get the biggest, a few of the biggest YouTubers that have a big following to start spreading this message of, hey guys, there's this new Black Planet, version 2. Let's just say that for now, Black Planet version 2, $5 a month, and people helping you out in all different aspects. Because we've got everything right here in Black YouTube. We've got people from all walks of life and all different sectors and experiences that can help each other out, and to build something. And then that money brought in from that can be used to build and create now a banking system. You know what I'm saying? We
have something called Ujima. Let me share my screen real quick. So this was already thought of. What you're talking about was thought of years ago. So this is, let me share my screen. And then we got to close out. This is the Ujima project. So everything that you're talking about, they've already started this. So they're already talking about building a new ecosystem, as they're talking about right here. So they have their own treasury notes. They have their own treasury bonds and stuff like that that they've cultivated. And they work on building up Black businesses to stave off gentrification, poverty, homelessness, and the lack of food access. So they're also involved in farming. So now you can buy shares in shares on from a farm, a local farm. And so we did a live stream last summer called Guerrilla Farming. If you go back to our live stream, you'll see that we posted pictures of this. And I'm just reading this out loud. It says, we need a solution that is equally complex. Explore our ecosystem of innovative strategies for transformation. So they're already working on this, Mike, to your point. So there's appointed people who are voted in, appointed for the whole entire project. So you can invest into it. It has time bank and has tenants within the body itself. So I was a part of this a couple of years ago before we started Black Brain Trust. I was a part of this. So. So they're already talking about building up technological services and whatnot and things of that nature. You see right here, they're supporting the Black Bike School, right here, building bikes within the community, and people are buying from it. All the Black businesses are put inside of a directory so that you buy from it. Co-ops, like Nagone talks about a lot. Co-ops are very important. That's what they focus on.
Right.
So this has already been done.
I believe the Black banking system should be cooperativized as well.
Yep.
Right, like a credit union.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like credit union, but there are cooperative banks that we have here in the United States that people don't even talk about. The Bank of North Dakota, people don't even know about it. It's been a national. It's been a cooperativized or public bank for well over 100 years. It was founded in 1915. And it has been a bank that has been exceedingly successful. It hasn't had one closure, not one run on it, not one problem with that bank since it's opened. And it's a public bank, and it serves its community. And the Republicans and Democrats won't touch it. They won't even touch that issue. They don't want to get near it. And they sit there and they run their game like that, and they're very successful right now. And when all the other banks started crashing and falling out and getting torn out the frame, they weren't even remotely touched and had no parts of TARP. No parts of it. You have to ask yourself why. Now, most people don't understand that the banking or economic system here in this country. I do. That can be explained. I don't want to sit here and explain that right now, but there are reasons for that. But let me tell you something. There's an awful lot of money in investing in yourself and your community. There's a lot of money in there. They understand it. These are the scamsters that are running the scam game on folks, running a whole different game. This is something they don't want you to get your hands on, because they know once you do that and you understand this as a group, you have changed the game forever. But that's what they don't want you to understand. They want you to be economically stupid. And they want you running around being reptiles and talking about putting fucking hot ones in each other and you a bitch this and that and that. You know, they want this. They want you to be thinking this way. It's beneficial for them.
Right. And see, that's what I'm saying is like we got to build kind of like our own economy to where we're serving each other. And like they say, the Jews and the Indians and the Chinese, they all buy from each other, and they're
already working on that right now. It's already been worked on. So the Ujima project, although it says local, is actually national. So they're actually going from all major Black metropolitan areas around the country, Detroit, Baltimore. They travel around. So they're building out the system now. They've been building out for a couple of years now. So it's about looking at the demographics and trying to actually construct more dialogue about how to implement this sort of strategy. So everything that you're talking about, they're already doing. So this is going to take some time to actually build out. It's not something that can happen overnight, but it takes time. It takes a lot of time to invest into it too. So people have to travel. That sort of travel needs to be paid for and stuff like that. So some people in the chat are saying, that seems local, but at the same time, I don't see anybody else talking about it. So
it takes a lot of time to actually build the brand cachet, because a lot of times, that whole white ice, the ice is colder mentality, really hinders the growth. So that's the reason why things like this take such a long time. Like, when you talked about Black Planet is still up and running. It's never actually went down, although the ownership, now rests with Media One. For those that don't know, Media One is like, they have, a couple radio stations and, just like a big conglomerate. So they actually own Black Planet as well as Mi Gente, and I believe it's a Yellow Planet as well.
I know them very well. That's very good, and I knew of Oscar who started it. I knew the man. So but anyway, people talk about this sounds local. Banking, wealth, everything else like that we talk about is like politics or national politics. All politics is local. All basic economics and fundamentals of economics are local as well. It's all local. So you run the many as you run the few. It's the same. Okay, it's just a matter of formations and signals, as old Sun Tzu used to say, and that would mean, as long as you have an organized program that works and you have a situation that can call and move things a certain type of way, you can move one like you can move a million, and that's how it works. So it's all local. All politics is local. National politics is local. The same with our economic game. We just have to really start to think a little bit more. Well, one of the things why black banks started getting a little bit more money is when they started having these vicious attacks against black people and cops shooting you down in the streets and people acting crazy and white folks acting crazy. Black folks started getting guns, and they started putting their money in black banks because folks started to think, shit, it's starting to happen. And white boys are starting to get obstreperous, and they're running around shooting folks up and blowing folks away, and shit's getting ready to break wide. We can only count on ourselves. It's the only time black people start thinking that, oh man, we got to start investing in ourselves now, because we can't go to to the white guys. It's the love of this white man that we have a real issue with, and we have to deal with some of that. This is an issue because he don't love you. So we got to start loving ourselves to a large extent, and you put your money where your mouth is. Where you start to really invest, and that's your safest investment is yourself. That's where you make the most money is with yourself. And a lot of us don't believe in that as of yet. It's going to take a while for us to change how we think, but that's a big part of it. It's a big part of it. If we could take every $10,000 that we put into the banking system that goes into the white banking system, if we could take every 10 grand that we have and put 5,000 of that into a black banking system, all right, that's owned by a black bank. We're not talking about one of these fronts, but a black banking system that's black owned, that serves the interests of the black community. You could change the very financial complexion of your community in 5 years. 5 years, not a long time, not 20, 30. 5. Change things around very quickly.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, I think Cocaine Kells had raised a hand. Cocaine, do you have anything you want to add?
I was just going to say the comments that I made in the chat were only because I was looking at the website and I actually just saw local. So
good thing. That's a good thing.
Thank you for clarifying, but that is what I was referencing is based on what I saw. That's all I had to say.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for joining us, and please hit the like button if not already done so. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust and those posted on the community tab. Hold tight, everyone.